I'm here with Dr. Aristo Vajtani. Hello, welcome. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me, Jason.
So for the audience here, I don't know, many may know your name, many may not, but you've been doing this 40, 50 years
Yes.
at the research level. Like you're kind of the father of immunology. And for those who don't know this guy's credentials, he's given testimonies to Congress related to, I think, was it the Iraq War,
Yes.
Persian
Yes.
Gulf,
Yes.
and some of the exposures that some of the military men and women have been exposed to, which changed legislation, I think. He's done hundreds of research papers at this point, probably published so many works, won numerous awards, including Lifetime Achievement Awards from very prestigious organizations. I mean, this is the guy when it comes to food sensitivities, immunology, and really paved the way, I think, for a lot of functional medicine practitioners and some of the understanding that we now have. And yet we're still learning more in this field, right? Like this is, I mean, it's wild to hear you say sometimes, we still don't know. And that's how complex the immune system is. And yet there are a lot of things that we do know that can allow us to take actions in the real world that can affect these things. And we'll get into some of the things that with regard to COVID and how that has changed the landscape and some of the things that you've looked at there. But I want to start with the basic idea. I want to ask you, what is going on with food sensitivities? I would imagine in the last 40, 50 years, you've seen dramatic changes, and what's happening on that level, on a sort of high level, a couple sentences, so to speak.
Just a little bit clarification. In the laboratory setting, there are two types of tests. One is called FDA approved. So we buy a kit from a manufacturer. They prepared everything for you. So no matter where you do that test, you do it in Brazil, you do it in Los Angeles, you get similar results. Okay. So that's one type of testing. The second type of testing, it's called home brewed or laboratory developed test or laboratory developed assay.
Okay.
LDA or LDT. Okay? The problem with LDT is, including measuring antibodies against food, is the laboratories, each one of them, they have their own methodology. And I don't know what is done in the other laboratories. The other laboratories don't know what's done in my laboratory. In 2014, one of my colleagues, Dr. Andrew Campbell, who is editor-in-chief of Alternative Therapies, sent a request to the laboratories who are doing food sensitivity testing that I'm giving you an opportunity to write your methodology, explain to the world, what do you do in your laboratory? So I wrote 7 articles. And other than one lab who wrote 1-page article, the whole issue became my 7 articles. That shows how much they're really sure of what they are doing in their laboratory. So we don't know. So the point I'm trying to make, unless the methodology used in different laboratories, I'm talking now about laboratory developed assays, the home brewed testing, use the same antigen, use the same method, you are going to get 10 different results if you send a blood of single patient to 10 different laboratories.
Right. And this is why we see a lot of confusion in sort of the integrative functional space of, we've got a few different types of tests out there. We send the client sample in and we get different foods reacting supposedly. You know, it might be highly reactive to these 10 foods and mild reaction to these 15 foods and no reaction to these other foods. Different lab, different methodology, different results. This creates a lot of confusion because, and partly I would say is because if we get one of these lab test results back, and we don't really have an idea as a customer, client, or patient which lab I'm supposed to be using. But I see these, let's say 5 or 6 foods, and I say, and it says that I'm reactive to them, and I have that experience in my life that I am reactive, then I'm going to start to believe that this is an accurate test across the board. And so when it says these 30 foods that I'm have no reaction to, and yet I may notice some or I may not, but I'm still reacting, it just creates this complex scenario of confusion, in which case, what do we do with that?
So for many years, I felt guilty about all of this. Why? Because in 1986-87, after cytotoxic testing was forbidden to be performed in California and Florida, so I came out with ELISA, which is enzyme-linked immunosorbent assay, a new method discovered a few years before that for measuring antibody against foods.
So it's IgG, IgA, IgM.
Correct. Yeah. Mainly IgG and IgA
Right.
I was dealing with. So why I was feeling guilty? Because the laboratories who were doing it, as we said, they were reporting different results.
Mm-hmm.
So I completely stopped for 20 years until 2010. I stopped doing or dealing with food antibody testing. So in 2010, I decided to go back and make the record straight and wrote my book. Please, when you have time, read chapter number 6, going through all this history.
So you've seen this whole thing play out over the last 4 decades, basically.
Absolutely. I was sitting and watching. So in 2010, I started doing research and finding where is the root cause of the problem. The root cause of the problem is, what do you use in your test? It's called an antigen.
And this is the thing that the body's responding
How
to.
pure is
That's
that antigen? This is really the heart of the matter. So most laboratories, either they go to supermarket, and I have seen some of those labs. I visited them because I'm friend with most of them.
Mm-hmm.
Go to supermarket, broccoli, apple, potatoes, just grind it up, centrifuge, and they put it on the plate, and they measure antibody against that. So just, what is the problem with that? The problem with that is there are so many impurities in that soup called potato
Right.
or broccoli, you're not going to get accurate results. That's how I started doing it. That's why I felt guilty about it.
Right.
So throughout the years, I was witnessing evolution of testing in the field of autoimmunity. Classical example, in multiple sclerosis, they used to measure antibodies against brain sections. They cut the brain, put it on the slide. You add the serum of the patient, and then addition of reagents. Under the microscope, if you see staining of the brain, you say, oh, the patient may have antibody against brain tissue antigens. But the problem was they used to get 60% false positive when you use that section.
So that means there's a reaction against something else.
Of course. It's analogy exactly to the same broccoli or potato.
Right.
So someone came with the idea, purification of myelin basic protein. Myelin basic protein, pure protein. Now you can purchase from different companies, put it on the plate, and you get probably with 90% accuracy compared to section of the tissue in patients with autoimmune disorders, including Gulf War syndrome that I did research with. The next step is the scientists finding the exact peptide For example, peptide 85 to 105 of myelin basic protein is responsible for that autoimmune reactivity.
So it's a specific sequence of amino acids
Yes.
that are part of this greater protein, which is now purified, so that we can
Yes.
see exactly which section has this cross reactivity.
Correct. Now, you use that, you get close to 100% specificity.
Okay, so this is I think this is really cool. So you're saying originally we started with this broad soup of things, and we're getting some accuracy, not very good. So we start to get specific. Now we select the protein. Now we're getting better accuracy. Now we're even getting more specific within that protein, and we say, here's the sequence, here's the code, and now we can get pretty much exact match.
Yes. Now let me give you another example from food. You take wheat, the whole wheat.
I don't even know what wheat is anymore. That whole thing.
Okay. The whole wheat.
Yeah.
And make antigen out of that. And you measure antibodies against wheat. And you get lots of positivity. Can you say the patient is having celiac disease by doing that? No.
Right.
No. Lots of false positives. Then they discovered that alpha gliadin,
Which is a type of protein.
560 amino acids, is involved in celiac disease. So you measure antibody against that, but then later on they found that specific 33 amino acids become deamidated in the gut and binds to transglutaminase. This complex becomes foreign material, you react against it, and you make antibodies against alpha gliadin peptide and transglutaminase. Therefore, detecting IgA antibody against that pure alpha gliadin and transglutaminase is the best way to diagnose celiac disease.
So, and because when going back to the wheat, we also have other proteins, right, that we may be reactive to. Wheat germ agglutinin, alpha gliadin, right? There's more. I'm sure. I'm just not thinking of them right now. But there's a whole array of proteins.
Yes.
And so in order to get specific about what is actually happening, so somebody could be sensitive to wheat and recognize it, feel it, have responses. But if we want to take a scientific approach and understand really what's happening, we got to get specific with the proteins and even the peptide sequences.
Yes. 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 So very interesting that many grains, they have different proteins. Like again, we take example of wheat. Some of these antigens, such as alpha gliadin, is soluble in alcohol.
So what does that mean?
Meaning that if you take wheat and put saline, which is water and salt, and you extract that protein of wheat, you are getting only water soluble proteins, not the other proteins which are important for diagnosis of celiac disease, like alpha gliadin. The gluten parts, the sticky parts, it doesn't dissolve in water. It's only dissolved in alcohol. And so how many laboratories measuring antibodies against wheat proteins really extract wheat with water and with alcohol, and then you mix together and you measure antibodies against the combination? I don't think, other than Cyrex, which is, I'm behind, I'm not going to be selfish in here, that they have that knowledge. So the same thing is applied to the other antigens as well. So that's one level. The second level is, again, you cannot take broccoli and make a soup out of it, and then you put it on the plate and you measure antibodies.
Okay, and just let's get really specific on why, because there's a variety of proteins. Okay, there's chemicals perhaps, right?
Yes, because there are lots of impurities. The pH could be acidic or alkaline. There are lots of impure factors in every mixture of a plant. or fruits. So unless you do purification of the proteins and get rid of all these non-specific ones, you are not going to get reliable test results.
So this is really important. And so I think for many people that have maybe run some different tests, they don't know why these things are happening. And it's really why I ended up going down the path of following Cyrex when it comes to autoimmune testing, when it comes to food sensitivity testing, and many others. Actually, I think there's 15 arrays or something. There's a number of different tests that we can use. But this speaks to the idea that we're getting very specific, and it has to do with your 4 decades of research in the lab. We're really looking at what's happening at this level. So the immune system is responding to proteins primarily.
Yes.
And yet we can have chemical sensitivities. We can be sensitive to a wide variety of things other than proteins, right? So in other words, people breathe in perfumes.
But immune reaction in relation to food is against proteins or peptides.
Right.
We do not react to small molecules such as perfume, or the best example is mycotoxin,
right,
or penicillin by itself, because it's called hapten. Hapten is a molecule, very small molecule. By itself is not antigenic unless binds to human tissue. Like penicillin, as soon as you inject it in some people, right away binds to human albumin. And then our immune system is going to attack those two together. Combination of the chemical plus the self-protein. And that set the stage to autoimmunity.
So that's kind of a neoprotein, right? It's
That's
this
called
new thing.
Yes, right. Exactly, neoprotein. So back to the issue of purity, and laboratories really don't know how to prepare their antigens. Even if they purchase from companies, and there are some companies FDA approved, allergists are using that, and they do skin testing. And what reason that skin testing are not accurate with food is because those foods, they are not complete. Those food extracts are not prepared to contain everything that is needed to test for. So let's take it to the next level. There are certain food that everybody is eating if it's raw. Certain foods we eat raw and cooked.
Carrots, maybe, right?
Right.
Good example.
Right. Absolutely. But potato, who is eating raw potato?
Right.
What will happen if your patients will eat uncooked beans?
Right.
With all those lectins and agglutinin and
right.
that the cooking is going to destroy them.
It's a different food, right? It's a different food. Right?
Exactly. So that's how I came out with the idea. The antigens preparation from different foods, if we eat them in a raw, we should test against raw food, purified, not take just the whole thing, the soup. And if we eat certain food cooked, we have to cook and make the antigens and test antibody against that.
And when you had this sort of idea, was this kind of a theory based off of your knowledge, like that somebody could react to a cooked protein and not a raw, and vice versa?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In past, since 2014, for 11 years we are doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And if you pay attention to array 10, for example, we have peanuts and roasted peanuts, broccoli raw, broccoli cooked, Brussels sprout, the same thing.
Right.
I have seen many, they do not react to the raw, they react to the cooked, and vice versa. That's why we have to test both. Now, why other laboratories cannot compete with this? Unfortunately, doctors are getting influenced by, for example, if you look at the exhibit right now that we are participating, They go based on who is having the largest booth that spending 50,000 or $100,000 for it, but not the small booth, which is, probably they paid $5,000, but they are really know how to prepare the antigens and do testing.
So it's
against it.
Marketing and influence is really.
So I did publish
influence.
at least 2-3 different articles about raw versus cooked food and showed all of this. So very recently I did this research that will add that to Array 3X in pretty soon. That so far, even right now, what at Cyrex we are testing, we test antibodies against wheat germ agglutinins, lots of peptides, pure peptides, 4 different transglutaminases. But what we are going to add is there's a huge difference between wheat versus bread.
Yes.
In reality, we eat bread, right?
I've just noticed this in practice.
So you might not react. So I have seen that in many, many examples that I have tested. You may not react to wheat or alpha-gliadin, but you may react to bread extract. And even we have some examples of breads without yeast, because you may say, okay, you react to
yeast.
to the bread because of the yeast.
Right.
But we have some examples of like tortilla. They don't use yeast in it.
So I just want to ground this for the audience.
So raw
here.
versus cooked is extremely, extremely important, and that's unique to Cyrex.
Yes. And what the broader point here, I think, for people at home is that we kind of have to get rid of this idea that I eat bread, I react, so therefore, and I eat this other food that has gluten in it, so there's this perception that it's the gluten. And what I hear you saying is, no, maybe, could be gluten, or it could be something else in this bread or that thing, or it could be the combination of the things, or it could be, because essentially bread is its own unique thing.
Very, very well said.
So it's could be the components, could be the combination of the components, could be something else, or it could be the conglomeration of this thing.
Yes.
So this is, I think, a really important insight for many people, because it sort of brings it back home to almost like, aside from the testing and getting specific with the testing, we can start to trust our intuition and start to be hyper aware of what it is that I'm reacting to. Is it the bread? Okay, well then bread is a thing that I have to be mindful of. And this thing over here, which may contain gluten or wheat, it still may be a possibility.
Yes.
So this is really, really fascinating.
Yes. I think this is going to revolutionize, this type of thinking. The testing in the field of, I even disagree with food sensitivity. I'm calling it food immune reactivity.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Tell me why. What's the difference?
And because the terminology has been used wrongly as measuring IgG or IgA or IgM as allergy. This is not allergy.
Right.
The real allergy is if you eat something, you know better than me, that immediately you react to it and you produce IgE, release of mediators, and causing histamine basophil release. That is type 1 allergic reaction, which is measured by the IgE antibodies. And there are many laboratories very well established. They are doing that. I have no problem with that. But I have problem with testing for IgG and IgA and calling that allergy.
Right.
So that's why if you look at the title of my book is Food Immune Reactivity and Autoimmunity. If you make IgG or IgA antibodies against certain food, whether it's raw, purified, or cooked, is that antibody going to attack your tissue and cause autoimmunity? Right. And I have lots of examples, and I'll give you only a couple examples just so the audience will understand. Mm-hmm. Let's take example of milk. Lots of people consume milk, and based on the research I did, and I think I published with Datis, Dr. Karazian, in 2014 in a journal called Nutrients, about between 20 to 25% of the population react to milk with all its proteins. But if you measure antibodies against alpha casein and beta casein, K casein, that drops by 10%. It's more pure now. And then interestingly, in the same article, when we tested antibodies against brain tissue, myelin basic protein, myelin oligodendrocyte glycoprotein, majority of those who reacted to alpha casein, beta casein, also made antibodies against their own nervous system antigens. What do we learn from this? That if you react to those components of milk which share homology with brain tissue, then if those antibodies from the blood will manage to penetrate the blood-brain barriers, those antibodies are going to contribute to neuroautoimmunity.
And this is huge. This is one of the reasons why food sensitivities cannot be ignored or just managed or just accepted, because it's not just the food that we're reacting to and creating problems. This will create problems down the line if we don't get a hold of this, right?
Absolutely.
And this can remain sort of silent. It can silently go on, depending on the tissue. It can be happening in the background without any awareness until decades later, and then things start to go awry.
Correct.
Right? And at that point, we got a real problem.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so difficult.
Because those antibodies can circulate in the blood for years. Something happened, stress, exposure to toxic chemicals may open the blood-brain barriers, or even LPS from the gut can open the gut barriers, and from there can open the blood-brain barriers. Now, those antibodies made against these alpha beta casein and other food antigens can cross the barriers and attack the tissue. But in many other cases that they don't need to cross the blood-brain barrier, just from the blood going to the tissue.
Yeah.
We have other examples of many food that cross-react with different human tissues. And that's why I wrote this book.
And this is part of the reason why we see in autoimmunity, it's rarely just one autoimmunity. It's, well, not rarely. Sometimes it is, but sometimes it's 3, 4, 5 different tissues that we're reacting to, right? It's because there's similarities in a lot of these proteins. We've lost our regulation, and it's just this chaotic mess, right? Why are people so much more, it seems to me, so much more immunoreactive today than, let's say, 30, 40 years ago?
I gave one good example. I made analogy or gave example of peanut butter. What is in peanut butter in addition to peanut proteins? Mycotoxin, aflatoxin. So evolutionary, we have enzymes can digest peanut proteins.
Right.
So we consume the enzymes digesting it. But what will happen when aflatoxin is bound to peanut protein?
So this is something new.
The enzyme will be incapable of digesting it. The end result of that will be that lots of undigested peptides in the gut can inflame the gut, leaky gut, and those peptides can get into the blood, and now we make antibodies against peptides. That's why I'm sure you agree with me that for majority of patients who have problem with food immune reactivities, I think we should put them on digestive enzymes. They will feel much better.
With these these are all creating new proteins that the body's having a difficult time handling. What are I think you said there's 3 foundational components to autoimmunity. In other words, 3 circumstances that lead to autoimmunity. What are those things?
We call them the exposome factor in general. It's more than three.
Okay.
But the three major ones are food, which talked about the mechanism of due to cross reactivity,
Right.
toxic chemicals such as aflatoxin, but there are many other chemicals,
Thousands and
forever
thousands.
chemicals,
Right.
right?
There's more every year, right?
They really forever. Why they call them forever chemicals? Because as soon as they get into the blood, bind to the albumin and stay there for, they say, for 50 to 90 years.
Wow.
And so you think that when Teflon-like chemicals bound to albumin, the job of immune system is to attack it and get rid of it. And that's the mechanism of autoimmunity induced by toxic chemicals. And finally, pathogens, they have different mechanisms of induction of autoimmunity. One of them is they release a toxin, and the toxin can damage the tissue. But the major one is molecular mimicry or antigenic similarity between pathogens and human tissues. And there are many examples, starting from oral pathogens to H. pylori, to molds, to EBV, HHV6, and finally SARS-CoV-2. And in fact, the three autoimmunogenic viruses that I worked with and wrote a lot about are Epstein-Barr virus, human herpes type 6, and SARS-CoV-2.
In other words, COVID,
Yes.
as we
So those are the
know
three
it now.
major environmental factors, of course, in addition to stress and many other factors, which together called exposome.
Right. But these three primary pathogenic organisms, food and these chemicals or toxins, really are driving a lot of this
Yes.
autoimmunity.
Yes.
And so what did you notice? Because I think you did some research on SARS-CoV-2 in particular and autoimmunity and these type of things. What was that research looking at?
The research started right around April 2020 or 21.
That would have been, right in the heart of all the mess.
The beginning of, the beginning of.
Yeah.
And in my laboratory, one of our friends came and said, in our community in Los Angeles, there are many people are sick. We don't know it is common cold or it is this new virus.
Right.
Can you help us? Said, okay, I'll be very happy. And the test just came out.
Right.
The yes or no test.
Yeah.
I said, I will be very happy to test 100 people at no charge. And he started bringing people like crazy. During 1 week, I tested 100. And you may ask me, what was your benefit of doing this? And I'll tell you why. Because the head of a scientist,
I was going to say, the curiosity alone.
my curiosity about autoimmunity. Okay? So I believe about 30% of those had COVID. The other 70%, they had something else. So they left, I had the blood. I tested autoimmune panel on those 30 who were SARS-CoV-2 positive. About 20 out of 30, either the ANA was elevated, or the rheumatoid factor, or dsDNA, actin antibody, mitochondrial antibodies were elevated.
So you're actually able to see how this autoimmunity is developing specifically.
They just started in those patients. Very low level. It wasn't like, rheumatoid factor, let's say 5 is the normal range. They had 7 or 8 or 9, not 100, like patient with full rheumatoid arthritis. So for me, that was, I believe that COVID may contribute to autoimmunity in the future.
And is it because of this sort of molecular mimicry piece?
I didn't know anything. So the next step was that let's communicate with different scientists who may have lots of blood samples of patients with COVID, because I didn't have. Let's collaborate with them. So I did communicate with Yehuda Schoenfeld, which is organizing the International Congress of Autoimmunity every 2 years.
I mean, even I know that name in Israel, I believe, right?
Yes.
Really, really big name in
Yes,
immunology. Yeah.
Yes. Listen, he's one of those who published close to 3,000 articles.
Yeah.
I published only 240.
And by the way, a lot that I would say goes against some of the mainstream thinking
Yeah.
and kind of rubs some of the mainstream
He
narrative.
knows.
Yeah.
He knows how.
Yeah, he rubs them wrong.
Absolutely. I have lots of respect for him.
Yeah.
And in fact, on this May, we are going to somewhere in Europe. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he said, I don't have, but let me put you in touch with someone at Johns Hopkins. And the answer was, I have close to 600 blood samples
Wow.
that I will send you in the next couple of weeks. And that was for me the gold mine. And remember
Totally.
that in this case, I'm crazy. I'm spending the money from my own. Nobody, gave me money to do this research.
Sure.
Right? But I love that.
Of course.
So I got the samples probably after a month. Not only that, they were classified as mild, moderate, and severe.
Wow, interesting.
That's a gold mine.
Yeah, yeah.
So I started testing, first of all, antibodies against different tissues. But before that also, I told you that I purchased monoclonal antibodies made against SARS-CoV-2 spike protein, reacted with 56 tissues, 28 of them reacted. We published that in Journal of Clinical Immunology, and especially the full-length article was in Frontiers in Immunology, I think right around 2021. So I tested blindly antibodies in those several hundred. This is directly measuring antibodies against 60-something different tissues in sample of COVID patients with different level of severity.
Okay.
Send it back, and they involved scientists from Brazil, Germany. Now, so we became a group. And so far together, we published close to 10 different articles, including in one of them in Nature.
And what was the finding?
And so all of that was real proof that SARS-CoV-2 cross-react due to cross-reactivity with human tissue contributes significantly to autoimmunity.
And so in other words, we get infected. The immune system sees SARS-CoV-2 in the body. It recognizes that it needs to mount an immune response, and it's reacting to aspects of that protein structure, the peptide sequences. And what we're seeing is that the immune system reacting to SARS-CoV-2 and whatever peptide sequence is similar enough to different tissues in the body. And so the immune system sees that code and says, well, this is a foreign invader. We need to react to this. And it's tagging other aspects of our body, of our tissues as well. And this is essentially the idea of cross-reactivity, molecular mimicry, autoimmunity.
Absolutely. Now, the next level was to deal with long COVID. Long COVID is something that I was very familiar with before many years ago. We used to call that chronic fatigue fibromyalgia 30 years ago or more. And now it's called myalgic encephalomyelitis, chronic fatigue syndrome.
Right.
So they found lots of articles now in the literature that overlaps in symptomatologies between ME/CFS, myalgic encephalomyelitis chronic fatigue syndrome, with long COVID. And who is contributing to this long COVID? Is it SARS-CoV-2 or other reactivated latent viruses? So that's what I dealt with Professor Mars. He's working now in China, but he moves to different countries. Another international collaboration, we published close to 7 or 8 articles together.
And so when you say reactivated latent viruses, these are things
Yes.
that we might have been picked up as kids, and they've been laying dormant in the system, and then something can trigger them to start reacting again.
Yes, in this case, the trigger is SARS-CoV-2. Not every person can clear the virus. So the remnants of the virus can stay in the body. You know, there are lots of receptors, right? ACE receptors everywhere, in the gut, in the lungs. Everybody thinks about the lungs, but there are ACE receptors almost everywhere. And even in one experiment, they labeled SARS-CoV-2 spike protein with radioactive material, injected to animals. They found it in the brain. So the conclusion was that spike protein can cross the blood-brain barriers. So not everybody can clear SARS-CoV-2 or its remnants. That's one thing. And those remnants of the virus acting on B cells, which we have some of those latent viruses, at least EBV and HHV6.
These are memory cells, right?
Yes,
yeah.
The memory B cells. They become activated. And when the EBV and HHV6 become activated, now they express early antigen D, another antigen called enzyme DUTPase, and another antigen also as part of the latent membrane protein of Epstein-Barr virus. So these antigens, immune system goes after them. We make antibodies. But majority of these antigens, this is published in past 2 years, whether in proceedings of natural PNAS or other reputable journals, they showed huge antigenic similarity between these antigens of Epstein-Barr virus with glial cells in the brain, with alpha-beta crystalline, which is heat shock protein in the brain, with myelin basic protein, with myelin oligodendrocyte glycoprotein. So what do we find right now in patients with long COVID? Exactly the same antibodies that found in patients with multiple sclerosis. Now they're detected in the blood of patients with long COVID. That's why we think that long COVID is contributing to many autoimmunities, not only in different tissues, particularly in the brain, due to cross-reactivity.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, I actually, so I had chickenpox as a kid. Right? What's it called when you get the secondary occurrence later in life with rash and totally blanking? It's like a reactivation.
Yes.
And I got it during COVID, after having COVID.
Wow.
And I didn't put 2 and 2 together, didn't realize that was a thing, but based off of
like shingles?
Shingles.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So I got shingles and I thought, this is crazy. What's happening? And it was fairly mild. It didn't really bother me too much.
I had only one shingles.
Yeah.
What is, it's VZV, varicella zoster.
Right.
But it happened that during my lifetime, I have been in America since 1979. I worked nonstop. 2 years at UCLA, and after that, everywhere. One time I got fired, or I lost my job. Okay, it's very difficult for someone who is so active, and you lose your job until you find another job. But I did not find another job. That's when I started immunosciences laboratory.
Oh, wow.
So I got shingles at
because
that
of the
time.
stress level.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, stress level.
So
stress is very important.
Yeah. So these things, but I think, I mean, this is a really important sort of connection piece for what we're talking about in this summit, which is sort of food sensitivities or immune reactivity, which is there's all these drivers that can create this process of cross-reactivity, autoimmunity, and a hyper vigilant immune system. What's the process of sort of unwinding these things? If we have some food reactivity, autoimmunity, how do we sort of unwind that?
First of all, number one, and the most important, is reporting accurate test results by laboratories.
Knowing what we're working with.
Honestly. Yeah. So I wish and I hope during my lifetime, I will see that laboratories will get together
Mm.
and say, okay, let's put our ego aside, put everything on the table. If Vojdani can make the antigens, let him make it for all of us. Let's use that purified antigens. No matter what assay you are doing, everything is depending on the purity of that antigen.
Right.
If he can, or another person can do the same thing, provide us with one antigen that works for all, therefore, the laboratories will start reporting reliable test results. And therefore, who will benefit from this? The patients will benefit from this. Until then, unfortunately, we are getting many false positives and many false negative results.
I just want to stay here too that, to me, not only is it just honest scientific work, right, as part of this, but it's really the only way we move forward because we have to get specific. Once we get specific, we can start to parse out the information. We can learn this versus that instead of this thing and not really understanding what we're working with. So I'm with you. I hope so, because it seems to me, just logically, that if we want to move forward in our understanding of how the body, how the immune system works, we need to get really a specific understanding of what's happening at that level.
Yeah, we are living in different worlds.
Yeah.
Listen, I used to go to UCLA library when my kids were like 2 or 4 or 5 years. I used to take them with me to UCLA library every night. Why? Because I wanted to read the journals, and if there was any interesting article, I could Xerox it in the same library and bring it home with me. Do I need to do that now? With just a push of a button, or even you ask AI.
Right.
Right away, you'll get about any subject the right answer. So the world has changed, and I hope laboratories or those who are managing them will become wiser and put their ego aside and say, okay, let's get together, all of us, and use the same, very similar to what is done in kits. So no matter the test is done in Los Angeles or Chicago or Florida, we should get similar results.
Right.
Otherwise, please do not waste your money on testing for food sensitivity. That's my message.
Dr. Vajani, this has been fantastic. I love the work that you're doing. I love your excitement and your curiosity about it. You've changed the game in so many ways. So thank you for joining me today. Thank you for everything you're doing.
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me. Thanks.
I hope you've been able to catch all the presentations so far. There are a ton of breakthrough strategies and innovative solutions being shared in these 5 days. So if you're worried you might miss any of these life-changing interviews, pick up your all-access pass now at the special event-only discount. Click the button below on this page to secure your on-demand lifetime access to the entire summit, plus over $1,200 in exclusive bonuses. This won't last long, so please take advantage of this incredible 67% discount today. Your contribution also helps us to get this cutting-edge information to as many people as possible, so thank you. Well, joining me now is Ben Tameta, who is a mechanical engineer. He is a sort of biohacker and an expert in molecular hydrogen. And he's got his own health story, too, that he'll share along the way. But we've got a fascinating presentation for you today. And Ben and I are going to share both of our stories, actually, with hydrogen and specific forms and types of molecular hydrogen that becomes really important when it comes to the effectiveness and how it actually works. So, Ben, thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jason. Appreciate you having me here today and share my story and our story. And I think we got a really nice presentation, visually, stunning, that people are going to really learn some good things.
Yeah, my sort of journey with molecular hydrogen has spanned a few years now, maybe 10, 8, 9, 10, something like that. And when I first heard about it, I thought, wow, this is really cool. I got to try this. I got to experiment with this, see what's happening. And my first few attempts with this stuff, it didn't yield any results.
I thought, okay, I've seen the research papers and we'll get into some of these things, but there are like thousands of research papers, mostly in Japan and the East, and that kind of thing is where they kind of initiated, and now more in the US and in Europe. But I saw that there's a huge body of literature on molecular hydrogen, why it works, how it works, and its effectiveness. And I thought, surely I'm going to see results, and I didn't. And I now know why. And we're now in a much better position. And I'm seeing amazing results with the molecular hydrogen that I've been using. And I'll get into that in a little bit later. But with respect to food sensitivities and the gut, I think most people aren't really thinking about hydrogen, how it can be utilized. But we're going to explain exactly why hydrogen is such an underutilized therapeutic tool. So go ahead and share your screen. We'll dive into this presentation.
All right, the title of this presentation today, the healing power of molecular hydrogen. And what I think when I first came across this, like this has got to be the future of health. I mean, that's how powerful I found it to be. And so I ask people nowadays, like, who else wants a healthy gut, enhanced brain function, a regulated immune system, and increased energy? And so one of the first things people ask is, what is hydrogen therapy? Some people are very new to this. And so it's about introducing molecular hydrogen, H2 we call it also, into the body for faster healing and improved overall health. We can do that by infusing hydrogen into water for drinking, also inhaling, breathing the H2 gas, the hydrogen gas. We find that this is the way that's most effective. I say 80 to 90% of the potential benefits come from inhalation. And this is what we really focus on. But then also diffusing, topically by bagging your hand and extremities, joints that have been damaged or painful or slow healing, because the hydrogen is such a small molecule, it diffuses very easily through the skin, and this helps to target localized injuries and also inflammation and skin conditions. So these are the three main delivery methods of molecular hydrogen when we're talking about the therapy here. And so my background, to give you an idea of who I am, where I come from, in my thoughts here, I'm a scientist and engineer. I'm not a doctor, so I offer a very unique perspective. I've been studying the natural health industry for over 30 years now, and so my perspective is a little bit different. I'm a layperson engineer, but I come through it from an engineering point of view. And so my overall goal was to increase my health span and to have a better quality of life, to have the energy in a brain to be able to think and just interact in the world. I don't want to just gradually, fade away, with my health. And so, the challenge of aging, we've got declining energy, cognitive functions declining with all these, dementia, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, things, conditions become more prevalent. We're becoming more increasingly susceptible to illnesses as well. And so we can pretty much say our shared desire is, better sleep, or sharper minds, faster healing, and more youthful energy, and just, finding that miracle fountain of youth type of situation that, gets us going again. I like this quote. They say, a healthy person has thousands of dreams, but a sick one has only one, and that's to get healthy. I mean, that's how important health is it should be to everyone.
I can identify with that, right? I mean, I understand this path very well. It's like that's all you want, and you look around too, and you're like, why can't I just that person's healthy? Why can't like, why can't I be there too? Why do I have to put in so much
Yeah.
work?
Exactly. It seems so simple sometimes, but I mean, and it can be, and
Yeah.
that's what we're trying to, this is one of the most simple ways to get there, I find. And so again, into a little bit more of my story and how I got here, with anti-aging and hydrogen. Early on, I was involved in some longevity groups where we looked at just the up and coming longevity therapies. And one of those was carbon 60. And this is a molecule, like a buckyball type molecule made of 60 carbon 60 atoms arranged in like a ball. And so years before it became mainstream, we were making our own carbon 60, olive oil, and observing anti-aging effects. And so it's like, well, why is this working? But after studying some more, we realized that the carbon 60 was acting as a transport mechanism for hydrogen. And so when we realized that, it's like, well, let's skip this expensive carbon 60 because we were spending hundreds of dollars a month to get these effects we were looking for, and that was getting expensive. And so with a little bit more trial and error, I've tried water bottles, and some of the hydrogen, pills were coming out at the time, but no real results. And so I thought then, well, maybe it's in the dose. Maybe we need to get more hydrogen in the system. And that's when our breakthrough came, when I ended up building my own custom hydrogen generator for inhalation. And that's where we really started getting results. And so it does turn out there's an effective threshold or a significant meaningful dose of hydrogen. You can't dissolve a liter of hydrogen gas into a liter of water. It's impossible. But these machines, generate between, 1 to 2 liters every couple of minutes, over 1 liter per minute of total gas. And so that it's just impossible to get that from drinking some water. And so you're literally getting a 1,000 to 10,000 times more hydrogen in your system through inhalation. And so that's where the key, you know, um, you know, what do you call it? The eye opener, came
Yeah, the
when
real
we
beneficial
really
effect,
got
right?
into
Like
the
that, and that's what I found when I was trying tablets, right? And there's these little tablets that you can dissolve into water, and I had those a number of times a day, and I don't notice anything. I'm testing, and nothing's really showing, any benefits in terms of health, right? Then I tried those little water bottles, right, that kind of generate hydrogen in a water bottle size, and I was drinking tons of water, and couldn't really discern any effects. Then I diffused hydrogen into water in a bigger way, and I could just never get there. And it never really moved the needle until I tried inhaling it, and that made all the
right.
difference.
Right. So from self-experimenting here, that kind of led us into business because I started sharing my story with other friends, family, associates, and people in our longevity groups I was involved with. They were like, "Well, make me one." They kind of pushed us into business, and from there we started gathering more and more experience and testimonials. And so what was I feeling? What was I experiencing? Because this is, I guess, important. To my journey was like so eye-opening to me. And so I can go through some of those points real quickly here. It's like just more energy and focus I felt, initially, also strength and endurance with exercise, better recovery from exercise, no more lethargy or brain fog in the morning. It took me, a while to get going. I was like, what am I doing today? Just slow. Now I
Hmm.
used to need naps, but now no more naps in it, during the day. I have much stronger immune system. No more colds and flus. I'm the last one in my family to, I don't even get sick right now. I mean, it's amazing. I can tell you so many stories about that. I used to be always getting sick, 3 or 4 or 5 colds and flus per year. Now it's nothing for years now. It's incredible just feeling so much stronger and better with a better
And,
immune
and, I,
system.
and and I want to mention something there because it's like when we say when I get a cold or I get a flu, what that really is translating to in our language is my immune system is mounting a significant response that results in stuffy head, fevers, fatigue, right, malaise. Like that's that when we say you've probably quote unquote gotten sick, gotten infected, but your immune system didn't need to mount this massive response because it was creating better balance and sort of taking care of things as you go. You know what I mean? Like in other words, we're always interacting with these microbes that are all around us. And the question is how much does your immune system need to like go into overdrive to take care of it versus not, right? And that's the biggest difference is that when you're healthy, when you're resilient, when you're robust, you either get sick. When I say get sick, you experience sickness symptoms less often, or when you do, you move through it so quickly and so gently that it's like it doesn't even register, right? It's like a day of just feeling a little off, and then you know what I mean? So it's like it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, and just the downtime, it just start
Totally.
dragging when you're not feeling so good, and just like your productivity goes down. It's just like, I mean, I'm so much more productive than I used to be in so many ways. It's incredible.
Yeah.
And then to get off a few of these, it's like just faster healing. I healed a sprained foot in 24 hours that I thought I was like, oh my God, I'm not gonna be able to walk for weeks or months. And like the next day I could walk again, limping. But then by the end of the next day, it was like walking.
Hmm.
Here to healed a torn like rotator cuff, a shoulder immobility after 2 years of pain, couldn't lift my left arm over my head. Healed plantar fasciitis after 20 years of pain in my foot, gone after less than 2 weeks of bagging it with the
Hmm.
external treatments of the hydrogen. Neuropathy in my leg and sciatic nerve pain gone now. Burns seem to heal faster. And something that everyone notices too is just the mental aspect. Mentally sharper, you feel smarter, better, deeper sleep with more vivid dreams.
Yeah.
Some people, it kind of surprises them. Man, I'm like having all these dreams and vivid dreams and colorful dreams. And I was like, well, that's one of the effects you'll notice.
Yeah, and that's for me. I've always had great deep sleep, and I sort of I did a 30-day trial, getting more into what I found in this a little bit later. But one of the things I found was not more deep sleep because I actually get like 3 hours of deep sleep per night, which is actually a lot.
I always had very little REM sleep. And what I noticed is my REM sleep increased in this 30-day window, sort of experimental window of inhaling hydrogen. And so I had sort of more vivid dreams and more active dreams. And so that was really interesting. I've always been really,
Yeah, that,
really low on the REM side, and I got a lot of REM sleep.
and then so the next question became, once we started realizing or seeing the benefits, well, like how is this happening? You don't usually hear like, oh, hydrogen does this to the body. It was like, what is the physical connection between hydrogen and the body? You know what's going on here? And so Um, it turns out that natural hydrogen is natural to the body. It's naturally produced in the body as a result of a healthy gut microbe, healthy gut microbiome, right? As much as 6 to 12 liters a day, and that's a good bit of gas there. And because most people are deficient in their having a healthy gut, especially these food sensitivities we're talking about, it's not correct what's going on there. They're at a big disadvantage of what they should be receiving as far as a hydrogen output as the hydrogen is processing and breaking down their foods and fibers in their gut. And so you can
Y-
then
y-
start to
y-
think of
Yeah, I was gonna say
hydrogen
so.
as a
So
supplement.
hydrogen is essentially a postbiotic, right? And so people might have heard this term these days. We have prebiotics, which is what the sort of the microbes like to eat. Then we have, of course, probiotics, which are sort of microbes that we might take, and then we have postbiotics, which are the various signaling factors that these microbes produce. And a lot of them are like B vitamins, right? Like a very common, and then various hydrogen sulfide, various hydrogen sort of elements. They produce butyrate. So in other words, we rely on our gut microbiome to produce a lot of healthy things that we need. And when our gut is dysbiotic, when we are lacking key strains, we're not going to be producing this hydrogen and other postbiotic signaling molecules to the degree that really that is optimal for our health.
Right, right, exactly. And then when hydrogen is known for being an antioxidant. It neutralizes some of the most potent, dangerous, free radicals, as a result of metabolism. Um, and so when we consider other antioxidants in the side we're looking at here, just the size of molecular hydrogen, it's a atomic, number of two. There's two atoms stuck together to make that hydrogen molecule. But compared to vitamin C, coenzyme, Q10, glutathione, and vitamin E, those are much bigger antioxidants, and they can't get into all the small spaces into your cells, into the mitochondria, and past the blood-brain barrier as easily to get into the mitochondria and cells to, we really see some of these benefits happening. So it's just a good visual representation here of how small hydrogen is.
Well, and one of the things that really caught my eye were early on in the research was that molecular hydrogen is a selective, like it represses the most damaging free radicals. So there's various forms of free radicals, right? So and it is selective for the most damaging because free radicals are actually a signaling method that the cells use, right? The mitochondria produce free radicals, they communicate to the DNA. So in other words, they are a byproduct of just healthy functioning, and they're actually necessary as a communication tool between the DNA and the mitochondria. So in other words, we don't want to suppress all free radicals. Like that's actually not a good thing. But hydrogen selects the most damaging kind to the DNA and sort of lets the you could say healthy, the normal amount of free radicals still communicate within the cell. That really caught my eye because CoQ10 doesn't do that, vitamin C doesn't do that. All these other sort of mechanisms of reducing oxidative stress, they're not selective like hydrogen is.
Right, yeah, and to that point, Jason, it's like hydrogen seems to act as a modulating or triggering or just
Balancing, yeah,
yeah, exactly. That's the best word. A balancing, molecule in the system where it
yep,
keeps everything in check. Some things may
that's right,
get out of check, but the hydrogen brings it back. And some
that's
things
right,
that are out of balance and lowered, it'll upregulate them.
yep.
And so it's in a way, it's naturally working with your body, unlike some unnatural drugs, which just can take things out of balance. And here, more and more studies are showing that hydrogen benefits all major organs and addresses problems with their most common ailments. I mean, I've seen so many feedback from clients and in studies now that address the brain, the eyes, the lung, the heart, the intestines, the liver, and all your metabolism, organs that go on there, your
So
kidneys.
not only do we have anecdotes, testimonials, but we have research backing up how hydrogen improves all these various systems in the body.
Right, right. And then at the core of what the hydrogen, one of the things that hydrogen addresses is it improves mitochondrial ATP production. And if you don't know, ATP is short for a molecule that the mitochondria produces that is the considered the energy currency of the cells in the body. And this is what makes you move and just keeps you alive. In these little powerhouses, the mitochondria, there are thousands of these little organelles, we call them. It's like an organ inside the cell. There are thousands of these in each cell, and they produce a usable, energy currency, this ATP molecule. And the hydrogen improves the process of this energy production in the cells. And so the inputs to the mitochondria, you can think of, the food you eat, the glucose, amino acids, fatty acids, also oxygen. You breathe in oxygen, so that's another input. And also hydrogen in these cases, what we're finding out that hydrogen is an additional input that can make things more healthy. And the outputs from the cell in the mitochondria, the ATP molecule for energy, right? Also carbon dioxide, we exhale carbon dioxide, and also water. And these two new scientific discoveries that have come out recently are kind of worth mentioning really quickly here. But it seems like hydrogen is directly interacting with the mitochondria, which is kind of new. It's like people wouldn't have thought this years ago. But in the first process in this ATP molecule production, that the hydrogen molecule atom is serving as an electron donor and a proton donor, which is pretty incredible. Because our bodies are electric, and separating the proton and electron and combining them back at the end is kind of what's going on in this ATP production. And just recently, we found in an article came out just in December. This paper says that the hydrogen targets this risk iron sulfur protein, RISP for short. So it targets this protein inside the mitochondria that basically improves the function of mitochondria and improves the quantity of mitochondria.
So,
So
to kind of use an analogy, we go back to that last slide real quick. So, if we think
yeah,
about the mitochondria as a manufacturing production line, right? The idea of a manufacturing production line, we're producing, I don't know, mirrors, okay, or headlights, right? The idea would be to produce as many of those products with the least amount of error as possible, right? And so, what sounds like what hydrogen is essentially doing is it's improving our productivity of that manufacturing line, and it's reducing the
right.
errors and the issues. So we're improving efficiency and output very, very simply with this input.
Right, right, exactly. And so this is kind of like the article or study that came out. And you can see the date here, just December 3rd, just in 2025, just a month or so ago. This was a surprise to many scientists. We're like, well, we know hydrogen works, but how and where is it? How's it doing its magic, right?
Right. Yeah. And that's the thing, right? Like, that's because of all these papers that we've seen, how hydrogen is improving all these health outcomes. The question at that point is like, okay, we can't ignore this anymore. We got to figure out really what's happening, right? And so the resources are actually still being poured into this to figure out how exactly does hydrogen work at the most fundamental level to yield all these benefits that we're seeing.
Right. So this slide goes into a little bit more of that detail, but really quickly, the hydrogen reacts with this mitochondrial protein that it targets and attaches to. It kind of breaks it down in a way, but it creates a hormetic stressor, kind of like exercise. It's like forces it to it kicks off a fix it up or repair system. And in that repair system, it boosts the mitochondrial productivity. It creates more mitochondria in end result, and this happens within minutes. Unlike you exercise and it takes you, say, days to recover and feel the difference of the exercise, this breakdown and repair process, this workout or stressor, it happens with the mitochondria. Since it's so small, it happens within minutes. And so this explains why, you see initial, damages or oxidative stresses, but then long-lasting protection appears with more resilient mitochondria. And so the end result is, you get less oxidative damage and stress, more resilient mitochondria, mimicking exercise, and more energy as a result of this process.
Well,
In animal studies,
I
uh-huh.
was gonna say it seems like we're basically making the system more resilient, right? And
Right,
look, we
exactly.
see this in beauty and anti-aging, right? People get microneedling and they get radio frequencies and all kinds of lasers on their face. What is that? That's a stressor, right? Like that's actually causing damage to the skin on the face, And when the body sees these little micro damages, it initiates the healing response. And so that's kind of an easy way to think about hormetic stress is like we need these little stressors, and especially at the mitochondrial level. For anybody familiar with Ari Witten's work, he talks about this a lot. This idea of hormetic stress is an absolutely essential aspect of healing and recovery. In other words, we need to make these mitochondria more robust, more resilient, stronger, more capable. I have a 6-year-old. His mitochondria are solid. Like they are good. He's got tons of energy, right? But us, over the age of 40, we get damaged, weakened mitochondria. This is the aspect of just getting older. And so the way to undo that or reverse that or protect against that is to actually build that resilience, right? And this is such an easy way to build that cellular resilience at the most basic level.
Right, right, exactly. And then to tie it back into some of the medical, where the medical community is a little late jumping on the bandwagon, but they're starting to get there. But this article in this journal called Onco Target, back in 2017, September 21st, this article appeared in this journal titled "Molecular Hydrogen: A Preventive and Therapeutic Medical Gas for Various Diseases." So here it was finally considered as a medical gas to be used in the medical industry. And to summarize this paper, and this is kind of where a lot of the attention in the hydrogen started gaining some momentum, and people started really looking at this seriously in the medical industry here. But just to summarize this your research paper here, it says like the hydrogen acts as a selective antioxidant, like Jason was mentioned earlier. It neutralizes the most harmful free radicals. It lowers body-wide inflammation and oxidative stress. It also prevents early cell death, helping revitalize cells, and it turns on and off gene expression in general for better health. It acts as a modulator. It cuts oxidative stress and inflammation by various pathways. And so here, additional kind of like hydrogen has many, I guess, avenues it goes down to affect health for the better. And another one that we found is how it relates to negative ions and the power of negative ions in relation to molecular hydrogen. And so we found that hydrogen diffuse into water, it creates an oxidation reduction potential in the form of negative ions. So any waters or liquids measured beforehand are then charged with electrons after the fact. And so we can measure this in water with an oxidation reduction potentiometer, ORP meter, but you're also inhaling these same negative ions. And this could be likened to walking on the beach where you absorb electrons through your feet. And that's why, walking on the beach in that salty air, which carries negative ions, is so healing and beneficial. Also, earthing mats or grounding mats, they call them, your body will absorb electrons through there. Our bodies are electric. If we're missing electrons, they can't function as properly. It's kind of like the lubrication for a lot of the bodily electronic processes. Our nervous system is all electronic as well, with electrons move around. And that's what negative ions are. And also in nature, and the pounding of waterfalls and what's going on in nature, it creates negative ions. And so all this, the negative ions, it reduces stress, promotes mental well-being, it boosts immunity, and strengthens cell functions, improves sleep quality and cognitive performance. It improves blood flow and circulation. And this is all known science, but we're finding that hydrogen improves these and provides these conditions as well.
Yeah, so this is kind of the explanation for why some of these things like Kangen and some of these other big names out there in that sort of healing water space. It's like they always talk about ORP and all this stuff. And it's like, okay, well, hydrogen is kind of the thing that can get you there.
Yeah, it does that and more,
That's
right?
right. That's right.
Yeah, and so what we've seen is like, well, curious about the blood, what's going on. These are like looking at blood cells under a dark field microscope, but blood cells, damaged blood cells or toxic blood cells, they have a positive charge, some of them. And so what that causes, if some of your, all cells have a natural negative charge surrounding them. But when some of your blood cells are, positive and some are negative, they start to stick together.
A clump.
That's
Yeah.
called microclotting or, on the blood cell level there. And so we see this under a microscope where there's stacking of the blood cells. But after 20 minutes of breathing the hydrogen, we find that, the cells start to separate. Their ability to hold a natural, negative charge again comes back to them, and the blood flows more fluidly without as much microclotting going on. Opposite charges attract, positive and negative attract, just like north and south pole of a magnet. But when all the cells are negatively charged, like two north poles of a magnet, you can't push them together, they repel. So that makes your blood more fluid and flowing. And so, I also witnessed this under a nail fold microscope, they call it, to just monitor the real-time effects of what's going on in my blood. And we noticed an increase in velocity in the movement of the blood cells. And in various persons, we witnessed less clumping of the cells and more free individual cells. And that would happen within 20 to 30 seconds of starting to inhale the molecular hydrogen. We'd actually see clumping of cells, or the immobility of cells in the capillaries. And as soon as people started breathing it, they started moving. It's like, oh my God, it's that fast. And to see it as an engineer, to like relate the hydrogen to actual movements, and we see it again and again, it was like, it's like, that's what you want to see. You want to see something working.
And that's the advantage of breathing something in, right? It goes, if it's a gas, it goes into the lungs, directly into the bloodstream, right? It's not like most supplements that is going to have to go through first pass digestion, get biotransformed into the liver. Like there's all kinds of stuff that need to happen when you take a supplement, right? It has to usually go through barriers of various kinds, but gases, especially something as small as hydrogen, diffuses right through immediately into the lungs, into the bloodstream, right? Like it's so immediate.
Yep, yeah, exactly. That's what's so amazing, seeing that, firsthand. But I mean, hydrogen is nothing new. I mean, now since 2007, they've been doing studies, and now you can find thousands, if not, 2, 3, 4, 5,000 studies on these PubMed and scientific journal websites. But I mean, what we've noticed here with our own experience on ourselves and clients and associates, we liken it to these 5 things that really stand out to us. And one is, just more energy, just less fatigue, better sleep, increased energy, performance, and recovery. And so how does this happen? This works because hydrogen interacts with the mitochondria to efficiently produce ATP energy, like we talked about, and with less oxidative reaction, less reactive oxygen species being created. The most dangerous ones are neutralized up front, that would normally cascade into inflammation and all the
Yep.
inflammatory conditions. The hydrogen neutralizes that before it becomes a problem. And so that leads us to the next one. And that's why we see reduced inflammation, a reduction in inflammation. Um, and we see this in like cases with arthritis and joint pain and just inflammation in general. All the inflammation type of conditions and diseases, they lessen. The symptoms are lessened. And this happens because the hydrogen is reducing oxidative stress, associated with incomplete metabolism on a mitochondrial level. In all these age-related diseases where it becomes more prevalent, our bodies are less adapt to processing these stressors. Um, Also improved circulation, we've seen, like we just mentioned, you know, some people notice their complexion changes, are more flushed, more reddish, and so fine wrinkles in your skin, people notice in the mirror when they look at themselves. Warmer extremities improves blood flow and circulation, and we've seen this like in the live blood analysis and looking at the capillaries. And again, this comes because, in large part, because breathing in negative ions improves the circulation in the blood here. But one of the most noticeable distance, what I noticed, and this is one of the most important things for me, is just improved brain function. I mean, I've had clients coming back, it's like, Ben, I'm remembering things that I don't know how I remember now. And they didn't think they had a memory condition, but all of a sudden they're recalling things more quickly from years and years ago. So just the mental sharpness, improved memory, clear mind, productivity, better sleep, vivid dreams, like we mentioned, and reduce brain fog. I remember just like, what am I doing? I'm sitting down, like, what am I doing? No, that doesn't happen anymore. I just know I'm just like, and hit the ball running, hit the ground running. Um, but also in conditions like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, getting feedback from clients about how even going from like in 1 hour to 2 hours to 3 hours a day, their Parkinson's symptoms decline. They're better able to perform tasks with better movement and coordination. And so the hydrogen, because there's more mitochondria and neurons than almost any other cell in the body, any neurological conditions are affected in a better way. They're improved on. And so the hydrogen helps tremendously. And that's where we see the most obvious improvements in symptoms. Um, And then back to faster healing. We less prone to colds and flus and just faster recovery in general because it boosts in your immune systems. It boosts the body's natural production of glutathione, the master antioxidant of the body. And so it does that in a natural way. It's not like taking, say, artificial vitamin C. We're like boosting your body's natural immune system, which is great.
Yeah, and I
And
would
then,
say, with when it comes to healing faster, healing is an innate aspect of biology, right? It's within us. It's not something a doctor does, it's not something a supplement does, it's not even something that hydrogen does. Healing is this mysterious, unbelievable process. And from my perspective, hydrogen, it removes some of the blocks to healing, right? By sort of stopping that runaway inflammation, provides a little resource for the body to actually initiate healing, right? And by improving circulation, right? In order to heal, we need blood, and you could say chi or prana. We need that to move throughout the body. We need blood to circulate, lymph to circulate. We need that stuff to move around so that we can heal, so that we can remove all the, in Ayurveda, they call it ama, this sort of dead, necrotic, dysfunctional parts and cellular stuff. We need to get that out, right? And so hydrogen's able to sort of facilitate these three really important processes, and then the body knows how to heal, right? That's what's so cool.
yeah, and then to tie this back into the theme of some of these food sensitivities, I found that I contracted a food sensitivity to mammal meat. It's called alpha gal syndrome. Not too many people have heard of it, but it's becoming more and more prevalent nowadays. They seem to think it comes from being bitten by a tick, and that makes you allergic for some reason to a mammal meat protein that's called alpha gal. And the first time I reacted was after eating a hamburger. What's strange is the symptoms don't come on until 6 to 8 hours after, as your body starts to digest the mammal meat, and this protein is free and available in your intestines to absorb it, right? And what happens is just like anaphylactic shock, hives, itchy tongue, swelling of the eyes, the tongue. It's like, it's crazy. It's like some people are allergic to seafood. The same thing happens, and it's like hard to figure out sometimes. Um, and I had to slack off on the meat, but what I noticed is that when I was breathing the hydrogen as part of my healing protocol, the hydrogen would lessen these symptoms. It would help modulate my immune system overreaction to these things. And so if your body overreacts and is very sensitive to certain type of foods, the hydrogen helps to modulate the body's
Yep.
over response. So like autoimmune conditions where you're just it's like kind of spirals out of control. Your immune system is overreactive to something that should normally be in check. I found it was tremendous help to me. Once I started hydrating, I didn't react so more. The symptoms were much more under control, and the hydrating was a large part in getting me over those food sensitivities and getting over this, allergy.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to the overreaction to foods in general, right? We have regulatory T cell function, we've got mast cells, we've got histamine release. We've got this sort of loss of control of a variety of symptoms, right? And underneath all of those things is mitochondria, right? Like that's what's so wild, is that there is no disease, there is no dysfunction where mitochondria are not involved, right? So
Mhm.
mitochondria, when you improve them, you improve every aspect of cellular function, of healing, of how the body is going to communicate and respond in general. So it's a really critical piece in the food sensitivity world that I think is often missing, is that there's not enough focus placed on the ability for the person to generate healing, to in other words, for the cell to do their job. We get lost in some of these other aspects, but we need to have good cellular mitochondrial function, because if we don't, we lose control of anything and everything that our genes are trying to express.
Right, right, exactly. And so another interesting question came up. Well, why haven't I heard of hydrogen before? Is there any other healing associated with hydrogen? And it turns out, there are some secrets that have been revealed as people study more with regards to hydrogen and what it's doing out there. And so I want to touch on these like four secrets of hydrogen revealed. The secret healing waters around the world, and why high fiber diets are healthy, and why alkaline water possibly may have benefits, and also anti-aging and longevity. And so here, in one of the secrets of hydrogen, the secret healing waters from around the world. In France, confirmed healing cases of this healing water was found to be rich in molecular hydrogen. In Pakistan, known for its longevity glacial waters, have some of the highest levels of hydrogen there. In Mexico, millions of visitors visit this sacred site here, and they've got confirmed medical healings. This water has been measured to be rich in molecular hydrogen. So in Germany here, hundreds of confirmed healing reports, where this water is rich in molecular hydrogen. So it's super interesting that people have been healing. It's known to be miracle waters, and people go there, but it's the miracle. It turns out to be hydrogen.
Wow.
And here, why some doctors, or it's kind of uh, a term people throw around nowadays, oh, fiber reduces the risk of cancer, but well, what is that connection? That connection is not made so easily sometimes, but it turns out that the gut bacteria, eat the fiber, producing lots of hydrogen, and it's the hydrogen that's actually associated with healing. I would say healing, bad word to use, but it reduces cancer in many cases, and it promotes
Providing the
healing
benefit.
in
Yeah.
general.
Yeah.
And we've seen tumors shrink in size by just using hydrogen therapy. And so it's not actually the fiber that's doing it, it's the abundance of hydrogen produced by the bacteria eating the fiber. So
Well,
that's
and
the connection.
here's the caveat. Here's the caveat, and the difficult part for people with food sensitivities, they may not be able to eat lots of fiber. So fiber is one of those things, like many things in food, that are beneficial when the person has the capacity to be able to eat it, right? I have
Right,
plenty of clients
exactly.
that can't eat broccoli, that can't eat, and it's like we can talk about the benefits of broccoli and sulforaphane and all kinds of stuff in the broccoli, but if I can't eat it, then what are we talking about, right? So this is one of those things. If somebody says, "Oh, well, just eat fiber," and the person's like, "I can't eat all these foods that have fiber," right? And so
Right,
it's like
exactly.
it's difficult to eat the fiber. So despite the message maybe being true, it doesn't really land because I can't hardly eat it. And so this becomes the paradox that one finds themselves in about all these amazing healthy foods. And it's like, well, I can't even eat them. I will break out. I will crash. It takes people down. And so what's cool about hydrogen is that we're sort of skipping that step and saying, okay, you're sensitive to fiber right now. Fine. That's okay. Don't aggravate your system. Let's go directly to the source of the benefit here which is with the hydrogen. Let's heal the system. Let's get the dysbiosis back under control so that we have a balanced ecosystem. And now we can bring fiber back in a way where the body's not reacting and responding, and the person's not afraid of it, right? So there's a process to unwind these things, and that's again why I love hydrogen, because I haven't met a single person who's sensitive to hydrogen. In other words, like
Right,
they can't do
exactly.
hydrogen because it aggravates them.
Yeah, because a lot of the food sensitivities are due to an out of whack probiotic system in your gut, right? And so rather than spending days, weeks, or months trying to fix that, you can cut to the chase and just start the hydrogen, which is why, in large part, you need a healthy microbiome.
It's a
So
huge
rather than
therapeutic
fix
tool.
that,
Yeah, it's a huge
the
therapeutic
hydrogen
tool.
is a shortcut to that in a good natural way.
That's right.
The third secret here, why some of the alkaline water treatment systems has benefits. Well, long story short, they use electrolysis, and during electrolysis, a partial amount of hydrogen is dissolved into the water. They say drink the water as soon as it's treated. Well, the water remains alkaline for days and weeks after the fact. So why is it so necessary to drink it quickly? Well, that's because the benefits come from the hydrogen. It's and so that, but it's because the hydrogen dissipates pretty quickly from the water. And so it's not the alkaline, it's the hydrogen in most cases that all these benefits are coming from, masquerading as an alkaline, benefit.
In other
But
words, it's
in
not the
actuality,
pH. It's not the
yes,
pH. It's actually that
exactly.
the amount of hydrogen dissolved in the water.
Right. And I'm of the opinion nowadays that alkaline water can actually be harmful to you and
Totally.
upset the stomach acid and prevent you from digesting food properly, neutralizing your stomach acid and making things worse. And
That's
so
right.
again, hydrogen is a secret here. And again, here in long-lived Japanese centenarians, hydrogen was measured in the breath to be 4 times higher in persons living over 100 years old as compared to the normal population. And so here, the conclusion is hydrogen is linked to living longer and healthier lives. And so we're getting closer to the end here, but the takeaway so far, the power of molecular hydrogen therapy here is, it's proven. We've shown how and why it works. We're jumpstarting healing by supporting all major body systems holistically, It's a safe and natural, easy way, very gentle, effective therapy that fits into your daily routine. I find it easier than taking vitamins. You just turn on the machine, pop on the cannula. You keep it near your bed or near where you're sitting down. It's so much easier than vitamins, I find.
Yeah.
So it's very practical and easy to use. And more research is coming out all the time. Real scientific studies, and we're getting nothing but positive feedback from ourselves, clients, associates that are all in support of the scientific studies that come around. There's a lot of corroboration in what we're seeing in real life versus the studies. So it's good to see corroboration there. Um, and again, we think that the expert knowledge we've gained over the last several years dealing with thousands of clients, we've developed our own internal knowledge base of protocols as far as what works, how long to do things in different therapies, and when to do what type of protocol and how long. We've got a unique knowledge base on our site after dealing with this for so many years now. Our website is h2biohacker.com, and then we're going to get into a special deal we've got for the summit attendees now. And so, this is the most modern machine we have to offer. The initial machine I built with off-the-shelf parts. It uses an older technology. This is a more modernized version of that. Um, and so with this machine, it's near zero maintenance. Basically, you add and flush it with distilled water. The performance of the machine, it produces 1 liter of total gas per minute. 2/3 of that is hydrogen, 1/3 is oxygen. So the hydrogen portion is about 660 milliliters of hydrogen. Very flexible usage. Two people can be inhaling the gas at the same time. It comes with a splitter. And so you can also be inhaling it and treating extremities, your joints at the same time to, maximize the benefits of each session. And then you can also unplug the cannula and plug in a small hose with a diffuser stone to treat water. Again, I find that inhaling it is where you get the maximum amount of benefits. Water is supplemental. It's good to do sometimes if you're going to be exercising. It's always good to do, but inhaling is where it's at for the maximum benefits. And also, too, I mean, these machines, they're made with titanium and platinum electrodes, so that they're made to last a lifetime. They should not wear out at all. And we've got, if there are problems, we're out of Atlanta, Georgia. You can send them back to us and we can fix them. And today, as a part of the special offer for the summit guests here, we're including a bag and sleeve. They look something like this, but as an example for treating your hand for arthritis pain in your hand, example, or bad knee joints, or elbows or shoulders. I find this sleeve helps tremendously. It's got a drawstring on each side to cinch it down. You can use, bags. I started with bags from the produce section of the store, but it's hard to cinch those down correctly. Rubber band is too tight, a string gets loose, but we found that these little drawstrings help to cinch the bag down perfectly. And the idea is
And
that
and
it
then
holds the hydrogen in that area just long enough to diffuse into the skin.
and then you stick the end of the hose, the little hose, inside that bag, and the hydrogen will go in the bag or in the sleeve, and essentially
Right.
fill that area with hydrogen, and it'll, because it's so small, it diffuses into your skin like rapidly, right? So
Right.
it's pretty simple.
And the cannula works perfect for this. I find you can put the cannula around your hand or around your knee, and you can use that little slider on the cannula to cinch the cannula down in place so it doesn't move. And then you basically put the bag or sleeve over the cannula. But the
Right.
cannula works great as a delivery system to get the hydrate into this, bagged area. And so why us? Why H2 Biohacker? Well, I mean, we've got very personal service. We talk to most clients and recommend protocols based on their unique needs. And in a lot of cases, that's me talking to people because I love interacting with our clients. We've got very fair pricing. We don't sell lots of products, only what works. We don't sell small and big machines that are special for clinics. We found that, 1 liter per minute is the sweet spot for the hydrogen that, works for near all cases. We've got a scientific and science background here. Some other countries or some other companies are selling accessories that are actually dangerous. We understand the science here, and we've grown organically. Started by healing myself and just sharing my story, and that kind of pushed us into business. We're a service first oriented family business. We've got lots of practical experience with applications of the molecular hydrogen, experimenting all the time and seeing what really works. We repair and build our own machines in our workshop in just north of Atlanta, Georgia. And now we're offering a 60-day money back guarantee. If you don't see results or notice any difference, send it back to us. I'm not in the business of taking people's money. I want to hear people's stories, their healing stories, right?
Yeah.
And 1 year parts and labor. If something goes wrong, we can swap it out also if there's a problem we can't fix over the phone. And so here, wrapping things up, we want to jumpstart your health with molecular hydrogen. This is the special summit price we're offering today. 26.95. This is over a $500 plus savings, depending on how you want to calculate it. But previous sales price just under 3,000, but we're offering an additional $300 off for people today. Also free shipping. In some cases that could be over $100. The shipping cost you're saving now. We're including the bag and sleeve combination, over $50 savings right there. We're throwing that into our summit guests now. And so this is a value over $3,500, plus the 60-day money back guarantee and, the 1 year parts and labor, instant replacement.
Yeah, that's amazing. And just make sure you use the code FSS at checkout, by the way, to get all those additional bonuses. I want to say, Ben, I didn't get a molecular hydrogen device because they were really expensive. And look, this is not cheap. Okay, this is an investment that people make. Okay, I understand this, but the machine before I found your machine, the one I was looking at has the exact same technical specs, produces the same amount of hydrogen, does exactly the same stuff, and it was over 2 times the cost of this. So
Right,
I hadn't bought
exactly.
one yet. It was on my list. I literally have a list of health technology that I want to
Your
invest
wish
in.
list,
Right.
health
And I can
technology wish
only
list, huh?
get them at certain points, and I can't just spend it into oblivion. And that's been on my list for a while, but it was because it was so expensive. I hadn't purchased one. And then I came across you and your guys' device, and I'm like, okay, hold on. What am I missing? Why is it half the price? And it's what
Right,
I've come to
exactly.
realize is because you guys are still a small business and you guys are operating in a way that doesn't have all the marketing dollars and all the big ad
Right, right.
budgets and all the things that come along with running a huge, sort of business in that way. And so this is an unbelievable deal, by the way. And for me, when it comes to investing in healing technology and things at home, there's a couple things that I look for, Ben. One is this going to have global systemic effects to my health, right? Long term, right? And things, just for as an example, things like this would be something like a sauna, right? I can use that over and over again and it has a long term global systemic
Right.
effect, right? Maybe a whole house
Exactly.
water filtration would be another example of one of these things
It's like
where it's like,
amortizing the cost over your lifetime as opposed to a vitamin bottle
that's
for the
right.
month.
And it's not just targeting like my thyroid or my brain or those are fine too. There's great technologies out there for all kinds of stuff, but I like to really start with the things that have global systemic effects on my body. Number two, if it can have an effect on not just me but other people in my household. So can my kid use
Exactly.
it? Can my wife use it? Can my friends come and use it? Can somebody who's sick come over and borrow it or use it if needed? Right? Can I use it with perhaps some local clients? Whatever the case might be, is it something that more than just me can benefit from? Right? So I look for that. And the third, and this may be the most important criteria for me at this point in my life, is will I use it? Right. So if you're investing in things that you don't like doing and don't like, implementing, then you're probably not going to do it. And there's going to be a sort of sour taste or a bitter taste in your mouth every time you go to do it because you don't really like it. Right. Even you want to like it, you want for it to be beneficial, but you're just not going to do it because it's either too complex, it's a pain in the butt, it's hard to use, it has some negative sort of aspect to it, right? Like, and some people would put cold plunge in that category, especially at the beginning.
Right.
It's not really that
Exactly.
fun for most people at the
Yeah, no
beginning.
fun.
You can learn to like it, but that's a good example. So this is one of those things that I found that has probably the most impactful uh, benefit for me because it's super easy to use. By the way, for those who can now sort of see me, I've been using it for the past 45 minutes since Ben's been presenting. I have my hydrogen machine working right now. I'm inhaling molecular hydrogen as we speak. You probably can't. Can you hear it? Can you hear the device?
No, I
No.
can't hear it. No.
Okay. So you can't even hear it. It's that quiet. I regularly use this. I'll show it too, by the way. It's got a really long cannula that connects to the device. The machine's over here a few feet away. Let me just pull it up here. So see if you can see that. So here's the device. You can see this here. This is as big as it is. I can obviously lift it.
It's maybe what is it? What 7, 8 pounds, 9 pounds?
Yeah, about 12, 10, 11, 12 pounds, depending
Okay,
on how much water you got
not
in
that
there.
heavy. I can put it on my desk here. Face to face. Oh, you can't really see that, but it's over here on my desk. So I can put it on the floor. I can put it on my desk. I can use it while I'm working, which is what I often do. So when I come in here, I work. I can take meetings, usually not face to face like this because people are like, you know, I'm sick. What's going on? But I can
Yeah.
take phone calls, write emails, do the things that I need to do in my business, and do this thing for 2, 3, 6 hours, however long I can get it in. I can also, if I don't want to have it at my work, you can keep this in an office. You can put it under your desk and do this at your office if you work at an office. Like it's so easy to
Yeah.
use and so quiet. The other option that I do often is I'll bring it into the living room. And when my wife and I are watching a movie or something, I'll have it there and we'll both be using it. So there's a little Y splitter so that 2 hoses come off and then we're both taking advantage of it while we're watching a movie.
Imagine doing that in a hyperbaric oxygen chamber. It's just not
Well,
possible, right?
or even sauna, right? Like, and I'm a huge fan of saunas, but saunas, you still have to have the space for it, right? Whether it's an
Yep.
apartment or a house or whatever, you gotta, you know, it's a whole process. Like you're sweating, you're gonna have to take showers, like
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
a
It
thing,
can be
right?
uncomfortable.
It's a part of your routine, and I love it. I usually do it in the morning, but I guess one of the cool things about this is that you can take it into an office space, an office building. You could use it at home. You can use it while you sleep. You can use it while you watch movies. You could use it while you eat. Like there's pretty much, other than exercise, which I'm sure you could probably even figure out a way to do that if you really tried at home or something. But you wouldn't
Mhm.
kind of want to. But any other time you can use this thing. And so again, for me, it's how easy is it? How much struggle and effort am I going to have to put into it? And with this, it's none. And the cool thing is, let's see if I can show this. So this right here goes on the side, and it's just there's a little bit of water in there, and distilled water, and you just have to wash this out every week. And so on every Saturday or every Sunday, I just clean it out real quick and then fill it back up with water and put it in. And then otherwise you just fill the tank up with water and you make sure it's got enough water in it. And that's it. Like it's the one of the most low maintenance, right? I might compare it to like a juicer. Love juicers, been juicing for a long time. And the thing when I buy a juicer, when my old one goes, I want, can it produce juice, right? Enough juice. Is it efficient at producing juice? And how much of a pain in the butt is it to clean? Because that's the other thing that
Exactly.
I've learned, that if I get one and it's such a pain to clean, I'm less likely to use it. So again, that's why I love this, is that there's hardly any maintenance. There's no moving parts. It's super easy to use.
Yeah, and other than just being super practical and easy to use, I find compared to all other modalities you mentioned and that I've tried myself and after talking to many clients, this is actually one of the most effective.
Oh,
You know,
100%.
so it becomes
But
a no-brainer.
and so the to me it's like, it's like a chicken and the egg. Is it the most effective because people are actually using it? Right?
Right, huh?
So it's effective because people use it, but people use it because it's effective, right? So
Right, exactly. Huh?
it's kind of both. And by the way, that kind of reminds me, I want to share, I did a 30-day experiment with molecular hydrogen when I got this device from Ben. And I measured a few things. I told you about the sleep. So it improved my REM sleep. My deep sleep's always been good. My energy's always been good. Even when I have health issues, years ago, energy was never a problem for me. My sort of weak links and where health and dysfunction tends to show up for me is in my skin and in my joints. So I know that when I have more inflammatory skin, when I have more redness, dermatitis, something going on in the skin, that's sort of my sign. And when my joints, my knees in particular, that always that started hurting when I was 13 and have essentially since resolved, but that's where things will show up. And I noticed my skin improved in complexion and color. So very subtle. I didn't have any major things going on, but I
Mhm.
noticed improvements there. I noticed improvements in my REM sleep, which has always been a little lower than I think most people's. Um, I noticed, and then I did a couple tests. So I did a sort of an inflammation test, and this is a test from let's see if I can show that celerity. Let's see. There it is. So this is a test that one can take. It is not the most accurate. Like I wouldn't rely on this as like the holy grail of inflammation testing, but it is, I use it as a proxy. So it's like it's a test that I use every now and again to see how is my sort of cellular inflammation. And I know, and I took 4 readings and they steadily went down over that 30 days. Like,
Wow,
and it does
interesting.
it by this sort of color. So it's not, again, it's not perfect. It's not this sort of hyper specific, but it's a global cellular proxy for inflammation. And I noticed dramatic or at least obvious improvements in that. I noticed improvements in HRV, which is heart rate variability. So I monitor that with my Aura ring, and I check that, basically daily. And what I noticed is that it went from what I think generally somewhere in the sort of 45 to 50 range, sometimes higher, sometimes lower. And it got up into typically 65, 70. So
Wow,
again,
that's
the
pretty high. That's
numbers,
really
yeah,
good.
it's high, right?
That's
It's
pretty significant.
typically for athletes, right? Like that kind of
Yeah,
athlete. And so again, the numbers don't really matter, but it's the trend. And so when you
right,
have
exactly.
higher heart rate variability, that means you're more your parasympathetic tone is stronger. You're more able to get into that healing mode, that rest and digest and healing and that regeneration. So a lot of us, our nervous system doesn't easily get into this parasympathetic, this rest and digest for a lot of reasons. And one of the primary reasons is because the nervous system is so acutely sensitized to threat, right? So it's sensing threat, perceived threat in our mind, our emotions, our thoughts, and very real threats from in the body. So when you reduce a threat like runaway inflammation, your nervous system actually calms down. So this was makes complete sense that I would see an increase in HRV, but that is probably the most, let's say, I'd say robust and accepted marker for your ability to heal, right? A lot of the
Right.
biomarkers we have are kind of they mean different things, but like HRV, pretty clear indication that that is your ability to heal. So
Right.
HRV went up, inflammation via this sort of proxy test went down, better REM sleep, improvements in my skin, joints hard for me to say because I'm my movement is so varied, right? Sometimes I'll do various things in the gym and that kind of thing, but I did notice that I had I would say faster recovery, more less soreness, less
Right,
right.
exactly. That's
And
why
so
a lot of people notice just less soreness in
it was
general.
subtle. It was subtle
Uh-huh.
when it comes to like workouts and gym and that kind of thing. But I did sort of notice it. I'm like, some days I'm like, oh, I feel pretty good actually, considering I went hard in the
Uh-huh.
gym yesterday, right? So, but again, there's a lot of variables when it comes to that. Sleep factors in. There's all kinds of things, right? So that's a little more hard to discern. But again, the skin, the REM sleep, the inflammation, and the HRV were very obvious signs. And again, all I did was do this somewhere between 1 hour a day, sometimes 3 hours a day, sometimes none, sometimes five, sometimes, it's just like all over the map. But it was like when I was thinking about it, when I was able to do it, I just did it.
Yeah, it's just breathing. That's you breathe all day
Nothing
long.
to
So
it.
it's something easy to add into your schedule, huh?
And when you're used
And
to it, and when you do it often enough, there would be times where I forgot that I had it on. So I actually would get up. My
yeah.
6-year-old would want me to go get him some apple or something. So I'd get up and I'd have this thing on and it kind of tug me back. I'm like, oh, I forgot. Yeah, I got to take this off.
Yeah, you
Because
don't notice it after a
no,
while.
you don't really don't notice it. And the air that goes into the nostril, it's so subtle. I first had to see like, is it actually working? And I couldn't feel anything. And then I
Yeah, if
put it
you
up to my
put it on
lip.
your lips are a little
Yeah.
bit more sensitive. You can feel
Yeah.
it coming out.
Exactly. So I
Because
put
if
it
you
on my
don't
lip and I'm
feel it
like,
when
oh,
it's in
there it
your
is.
nose.
Yeah. So which is good,
Uh-huh.
right? Like you don't want forceful air going into your
Yeah,
nose.
it's not annoying and noticeable at
That's right.
all.
That's right. And you have mucosal membranes in the nose. So the truth of the matter is, yes, hydrogen is making its way to your lungs, but it's probably being diffused in your nasal cavity, mucosal cavity,
Yeah. Yeah,
directly to the
everywhere.
brain. Like it's going across the blood-brain barrier. Some real advantages of providing sort of a healing mechanism through the nasal passage.
Yeah, and then what I find people that are starting to experience the effects of aging, just like the brain fog and lethargy and just, energy decline, those are the ones that have the most to gain from this. And those, it's more obvious once they start feeling the benefits from that. Healthy people, even elite athletes use it and it'll get like a 3 to 4%, gain in their performance. But the people that need it most are the ones that are starting to feel these aches and pains or just quirkiness in their body. I had things that I thought would never go away that I have for the rest of my life. They're gone. I feel better now at 56 than I did in my 20s, 30s, and 40s.
That's right. And so for me, when it comes to molecular hydrogen, super easy to use, has global and systemic effects, helps to heal, wife, husband, friend who has whatever different ailment than you have, right? It can support them as well as children. It can be used for the elderly and children. This is not something that we got to be really careful around people that are older or even, I shouldn't say this, but I would say even well, you never say this, right? But pregnant women, right? It's always this thing. Oh, be careful with pregnant women. But the reality is it's a gas. Like it's beneficial. It's around us all the time.
But I've had several pregnant clients that use this, and they went from 2 bad pregnancies to a perfect third pregnancy while doing the hydrogen the entire time.
That's right. That's right. And again, I want to be careful. I never make any medical claims, but and I know everybody's uber cautious when it comes to pregnant women. But my point is that even the most sensitive individuals and the precautionary sort of tales, like it's just hydrogen, it's just gas, and there's very little risk of Herxheimer reaction, of pushing people past their limits, right? People that are very sensitive to things, you really do got to be careful. Even with things like glutathione and other things that most people think are really, really healthy, they still don't tolerate them well, or you have to go very sort of slow and progress. Hydrogen, there's less risk of that, right? Like, sure, you can overdo it like anything, I'm sure, but how many hours of breathing it in is that going to take?
And the body doesn't accumulate hydrogen. At a certain point, it just diffuses out through your skin. So you can't accumulate it like you can other even vitamins that can become dangerous, or salt even.
That's right. That's right. And because of the mechanisms, we know essentially what it's doing. So anyway, Ben, this has been amazing. Again, for me, when it comes to molecular hydrogen, connecting it to food sensitivities, it directly impacts the immune system. It improves mitochondrial function, which is really, really critical because that is the sort of resource, you could say, right? It's allowing the body to get into the modes that it wants to get into to be healthy. And really, the challenges are it's stuck in patterns of threat, dysfunction, and it's kind of looping oftentimes. Even when the threats are removed, the body can still loop. So we need to sort of build that resiliency at the mitochondrial level, at the cellular level, help the body become more efficient, dampen down that inflammation. And this can be one of the most therapeutic ways for people with food sensitivities. Because again, we get so locked into the food side of the equation, and this is providing resource and sort of healing support at the most basic level.
Exactly. At the most root core level where the mitochondria is making energy for your cells, you can't go lower than that. And that's where true healing starts.
That's right. That's right. Well, everybody, like I said, this is an unbelievable investment into the future of your health and the health of your household. Ben's got, I think this is you're not going to find a better deal on molecular hydrogen. I can promise you that. $500 off and all the bonuses today. Just use code FSS. Again, that's $300 off his normal sort of lowest sale price of $29.95, I believe. So
plus extra bonuses and free shipping on top of that too, and the bag and sleeve.
So this is if you're interested, this is the time. So again, I can't speak highly of molecular hydrogen any more than I already do. For me, it's red light therapy, it's hydrogen, and it's saunas. Like those three are like the game changers that I can use in my household, and they all come with their different sort of things. But this is where I lean into versus all the biohacking stuff that's out there. Like there's a million things that you could rabbit holes you could go down. And to me, this is like the cornerstone, the foundation for me to provide the healing that my body wants.
Yeah, it's the most bang for the buck out there, in my opinion.
Yep. Agreed. Well, Ben, this has been great. Thank you so much for coming on and giving us this fantastic
thanks for
presentation.
Having me.
Appreciate it.
Before we dive into the next interview, if you haven't already, please do us a favor and share this event with your friends and family and on social media, so that these breakthrough strategies and innovative healing modalities can reach as many people as possible. You just never know whose life you might change by sharing this cutting-edge health information.
Well, I'm here with Andrew DiGregorio, who is a good friend,
I would say, a high-level coaching expert, works with executives at a really, really high level, and has gone through a dramatic healing journey of his own, particularly around food sensitivities and some other areas. And so I think this is going to be a really fascinating conversation. So thanks for joining me.
Yeah, so happy to be here. Excited to share, excited to support any way I can with this.
So take me to the worst of it. How many foods were you cutting out? How many foods were you eating? What was that like?
Yeah, it felt like I was cutting out everything. I was down to, it was probably about 3 or 4 foods I could really eat.
And what were those foods?
Like rice, chicken, and turkey, and beef or bison. It was pretty much that.
Wow.
That's it. And it was, the beef and bison were like not. They were actually, they still caused a little bit of problems. So mainly it was like chicken and turkey and rice. That was pretty much it. And I'll tell you right now, I got sick of it because this was like 5 years of this, having to eat only this.
And so let's talk about this in sort of like phases or chunks, even though it's not totally how your reality was. But at the worst, how long would you how long would you say that the worst part was? Was it like a year of doing this type of thing? Like 2 years of this?
Of eating just this?
Yeah.
I felt like it was way longer, but it was probably like at the height of it. It was definitely going on for, let me look back in time, probably like 2 to 3 years.
2 to 3 years of eating a very small handful of foods.
Yeah.
And I imagine every now and again you tried to venture out because you get bored. And
it's miserable.
There's an amazing thing here, and I want to just see how my body does.
I don't even think the word bored fits. It's misery. Like, is the right word. Miserable. I was like, I like to eat. I'm Italian. I have Italian blood. I like to eat.
I know you like chocolate.
I love, oh my God, I love chocolate. and I love desserts. It's chocolate for sure. And it was a nightmare. It was frustrating, depressing. Food. When you're eating with people and being able to go out to eat, being able to have community around food, there's something that humans have around food that you just lose. And I remember I was out and I'd have to go home to eat when people are going out to eat. Friends like, come on, let's go eat. I can't do that. I can't join in. there was like a retreat I was at, and I'd have to cook my own food at this retreat. And I was even lucky enough to be there based on my condition at the time. You were at this. It was in Colorado.
Right.
And
well, in one of these, there was it was vegetarian, the place that we were at.
That's
so,
right.
So even that, was very difficult to try to navigate because you could only eat rice at that point, right?
It was so difficult. And I would just remember sitting at a table that I was cooking food. I was cooking my food. I was eating by myself, and I felt so depressed. I was depressed. I felt outcast, and it wasn't like.
Even though people weren't treating you that way.
They weren't treating. No,
it was like
they had no idea.
Self-isolating.
That's right.
Just because of this one thing.
Self-isolating, and it felt lonely.
Yeah.
And it was really sad. It was like, and it was like I wasn't expressing this. I wasn't sharing this because I was like, it felt like people could not get my world.
Well, and even if they could, like, what are you just going to explain this whole thing to 100 different people 100 times? That's the last thing you probably wanted to do.
I did not want to do that. And, I also didn't want to feel like people have compassion around me generally, but sometimes you get a little pity, a little projection and story about what you're going through.
Which kind of reinforces some of these
reinforces
things.
It and holds you to it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And, okay, so that was the worst of it. How did the progression happen? Like, when did you, from the point at which you noticed some foods, because you didn't always react to foods, at least not in an outward expression that it was so obvious. So what was that progression like to get to that point? Yeah.
So, I think I was reacting to foods not knowing for some time.
Yeah.
I looking back, I had some body pain. Like it was like surface body pain. It wasn't muscular. It was like, I felt almost like fascia based. Best way I can describe it, in the tissues, and it would move around the body, especially around my chest. I felt like tightness in my heart. I started noticing like a little bit of breathing problems. Actually, it was like restriction that was happening.
But it was sort of somewhat subtle. Like
somewhat subtle. This is subtle
because, and we'll get into your the height of your experience and your symptom. But this was more subtle.
This is more subtle. This is at the beginning. I went to see a doctor. They said stuff about heartburn. They gave me some things to look at. So our naturopath, there was some similar kind of like pointing to some things.
It's hard to understand at that point. Like,
totally hard to
understand.
understand.
What the heck is this?
Headaches, a little bit tired here and there, like a little bit of like cloudiness.
Yeah.
It was just kind of all kind of generally present. And then it started to progressively get worse. When I figured out about food sensitivities, this is when it was on my skin.
Yeah.
I was
So you had hives,
I was breaking out.
for lack of a better word,
It
or
was-
whatever we want to call them.
They were like,
I mean, they were pretty
It wasn't
aggressive.
just talking about, it was like when you know, have a few hives, you have 1 or 2 hives. This was like,
It looked like you got stung by a million bees.
if you were to imagine like, you know, water starting to boil and
Yeah.
bubbles coming up,
Yeah.
this was my first experience where the hive started. Like it was bubbling nonstop all over my skin.
And
this was-
red and inflamed and just
Inflamed,
like
yeah.
it was wild. Yeah.
It's intense and it was scary. It was
Yeah.
very scary. You start to see this in your body, like what's happening, and then it started getting worse. I started having swollen feet, like I think at this time I started feeling the crawling sensation of not just the hives but like
The
burning.
nervous system.
Yeah, it was the nervous system. I had the fatigue and that pain that I mentioned, or like massively worse. Like so tired, could barely get out of bed sometimes, and then it just kind of progressively getting worse. And I started to eliminate foods at that point in time because
So
it was
you,
like
at some
foods are
point
the
you
problem.
recognized, okay,
Yeah.
there's foods and I think eventually you recognize chemicals were probably playing a role, but there's something in my environment that I'm constantly interacting with
Yeah.
that is creating or exacerbating these symptoms.
Yep.
And so you start cutting things out.
And what was wild at this time, I was actually trying to eat better. I was introducing more, like I was eating. I remember, you know, those little clementines.
Yeah, yeah.
I was eating those for snacks. I
Right.
was pounding these things. Bad idea. I found out later on.
Citrus,
But I
yeah.
was eating a lot of bananas. I was eating a lot of like what I was like. I was
Fruits, veggies, all the things that people talk
live
about.
foods.
Yeah.
And so excited. I'm like introducing all these things in spinach, kale, like all the things, trying to eat smoothies, not knowing that this is actually creating more of a problem for me, not
Yeah.
knowing at the time.
And this is a constant story. To be honest, that most people are dealing with.
Yeah.
There's a million different social media accounts and internet experts out there, and we start listening to these things about what we should eat, and what we forget is that, especially all plants have these chemicals in them
Yep.
that are defense chemicals, except for fruits, really. I mean, sort of in the peel, or in the outside skin, but fruits are meant to be eaten. They want to be eaten. That's the whole point. That's how they spread their seed. But
Yeah.
the vegetables have protection mechanisms, roots and things. And we forget that this actually is an inflammatory driver that can be good if you have enough of a constitution, enough of a strength within you.
Yep.
It's a sort of hormetic stress. But there is no way to say this food is good, this food is bad.
Mhm.
They can all be bad, and
That's right.
you proved that
Yeah.
based off of what you're going through. So it progressed the skin stuff. So tell me some of the other symptoms that you were dealing with.
Massive personality changes. Like when my immune system was going wild, mast cells were releasing all these different things. My personality started to shift. I felt I didn't feel like myself. Felt really depressed. Felt off. Like more anger than normal would come up. Like
Sure.
it wasn't just mad about not being able to eat. It was like outbursts that were coming
Yeah.
up, and I wasn't able to control.
And this can
Yes.
be explained too from my Ayurvedic perspective, is that when certain energies or aspects start to increase,
That's right.
well, they express in every way possible.
Yeah.
They express in the body, they express in the mind, they express in the emotions.
Yep.
Right. So these are just energies that are coming through, right? And this is how we express. And of course, we all have a unique constitution. So
Yep.
some people may be more fiery in general, in which case you're really probably going to see some
Oh, yeah.
outbursts.
And I had like what was really scary was neurological symptoms. I started like stuttering and shaking in my jaw and face. I had like twitching that was happening. This was bizarre things that were going on because I was overloaded.
Yeah.
I was so overloaded. And I also think that I do remember this time, I was like, this is when I started realizing that chemicals were also perpetuating and
So now
creating
you're forced to look at
like
laundry detergents and soaps.
It was a nightmare. And my
shampoos
wife
and
helped me so
toothpastes.
much trying to figure this out with me, but it's like, sheets, they hold residue of detergents.
Right.
If you go to a hotel and they're using bleach and if you're not realizing you're just laying in this stuff, taking in. And if you're not careful, you start to eliminate all these things, which you think you're needing to eliminate these things, which you're eliminating foods, being careful with chemicals. I mean, soaps, like basic soaps were causing me a problem. I was down to like cold water showers, like lukewarm, couldn't even take warm showers, like barely able to eat any food, I'm not that big of a guy, losing 25 pounds from where I currently am now, gray, my skin is gray. Every morning I woke up feeling and looking like I was dying.
Yeah. And I would say you had a pretty extreme case of what we could say food sensitivities. Not everybody's going to have that extreme, but from my perspective, if they don't get addressed, many people are heading that direction.
Can be.
Hopefully they don't get there, but
Yeah.
but that tends to be the path unless we get to the core of what's going on.
That's right.
And so you're in the height of this. You tell me just give me a sense for all the, the treatments that you tried, because at that point you were probably willing to do anything.
Yeah. So obviously I tried antihistamines, things like this, your basic stuff. By the way, that made it worse. Like I
Antihistamines
would
made
break
the
out.
histamine issue
I
worse.
broke out from.
So we should say here that you had histamine overload, and the
Histamine
body
overload.
was releasing histamine
Yep.
at a really high rate. And so there's lots of foods out there that
Yep.
you, of course, now became an expert in
Yep.
terms of what's going to have high histamine and how do I avoid that to stop exacerbating
Yeah.
the issues, right? So histamines were a problem.
Yep. I started, I did like acupuncture and this would break me out because of the needles, but I still tried acupuncture. I tried cranial sacrotherapy. I tried like energetic work, hoping that would work, psychological work.
Hyperbaric oxygen, I think.
Yeah, then that
chambers,
was next. I got into like hyperbaric. I did 60 hyperbaric chambers, like
which is a lot.
it was a certain protocol to help with what I was moving through. There was what else? There was all sorts of other things that I was doing that were.
I mean, you tried conventional, like semi-integrative, and then also as unconventional as you can imagine.
That's right. And at the same time, I'm my doctor's having me look for cancer in my body.
Sure.
I'm doing scans. I'm doing blood tests. I'm checking for mold. I'm checking for chemicals. I'm checking for not chemicals, heavy metals. I'm searching for what is the root cause of this, and all these tests are coming back clean. Which actually, I was hoping for some. I was not hoping for cancer, but hoping for
you want the
something.
answer.
I wanted the
because
answer.
no matter what it is,
Yeah.
at least you have an answer and a direction that you can
right.
go, right? And this is, and look, you can also come up with what you think is an answer,
Yeah.
and then you address that, and then it's not resolved, and
That's
then
right.
so there's just frustration wrapped in a lot of this process.
It's frustration. Also, a lot of doctors were dropping me through the system. There was like, I was even talking to naturopathic doctors. I was talking to so many people, and everyone's confused. I get it's a very confusing case. I understand that, but it was just like I felt extremely unsupported and lost in this whole arena.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, at what point did you discover kind of the essence of a solution here, or what was really going on? And what did you kind of learn in that process?
So along the way, people said, some people mentioned MCAS. They were saying that,
And explain what that is.
Mast cell activation syndrome.
So
right?
mast cells are kind of an immune cell in the body, and when they basically dump their contents at
Yeah.
an extremely high rate, histamine is also included in that. Then it's like this overactivated immune system. So you
Exactly.
basically your immune system has lost control.
Yeah.
And it is hyper reactive to everything in the environment.
Yeah.
Temperature, light, probably sound in a way that you
Electricity,
didn't even recognize.
electromagnetic,
Totally.
Sound anything can, even working out.
Yeah.
Like exercise, walking, basic
And we
things.
take these things for granted
Yeah.
in our daily life, but these are all stressors.
That's right.
Walking through the world, I mean, save for sleep and probably some kind of meditation, and maybe qigong, everything else is a stressor.
That's right.
And we were able to cope with them and deal with them throughout the day, and to the degree that they're actually really beneficial.
They are. Yeah.
So long as we recover. But
That's right.
But when you are so compromised as you were, all these daily stressors that we take for granted become overwhelming to
Yeah.
the system.
And mast cells are our first line of defense for a lot of different things. It's really, really a positive response unless it's out of control.
Right.
And it's a nightmare. So I had this knowledge of what it is. I've learned
So
about
now
it.
you got mast cell. Okay.
I have some
kind
sort of
direction.
understanding. Yeah.
Okay.
And then I was talking to a friend, and to be honest, I was like screaming to a higher power at this point in my life. I'm like, what the F? Like, what are we doing? Like something needs to help me. Give me a sign, give me something.
Sure.
And I had this intuitive feeling that I needed to listen to this guy that has said things in the past and has actually steered me in really good directions. So I trusted like his wisdom.
His guidance.
Yeah. And he mentioned that his partner did this program to retrain her system. And she had been dealing with something similar for like 16 years.
Wow.
I couldn't imagine 16 years. It's
a lifetime.
4 months of this is
Yeah.
crazy. 4 years is insane.
Yeah.
5 years, 6 years, you keep going. It drains your bank accounts. It drains
Yep.
you emotionally.
Yep.
So I really listened to what he shared, and I went and did this program. It was dynamic neural retraining,
DNRS.
DNRS,
right?
and it gave me this insight to limbic injury. It gave me insight to what might be going on and how to actually retrain and stop eliminating the things out of your life and to actually start to bring them back in, because I was still eliminating.
Because you have to. What else are you going to do, right?
That's what everyone's telling me to do.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
what most people are
Like-
telling me. Eliminate. This
I mean-
woman's telling me not to eliminate.
Yeah, and so the analogy that I give is, the house is on fire, and these foods, chemicals, whatever stressors act, they're kind of the gasoline, right? And so logically, you take gasoline off the fire,
Yeah.
right? And to some degree, that can be beneficial, right? It's not like you obviously just brought everything back in and started dumping gasoline on the fire again. You still were mindful. Okay, that's the gasoline. Now we got to put out the fire, right? And that's the first step. And then we got to rebuild the house,
Yeah.
right? Once you put out the fire and you throw gasoline on the house, nothing happens,
Yep.
right? But when it's on fire, you cannot do that, right?
Yeah.
And so dynamic neural retraining, limbic injury. Limbic injury is part of the brain that deals with threat, danger. It's kind of a safety mechanism, you could say, put very simply. And so this somehow registered with you as it kind of rang true.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, and I started seeing in others. Like I could see like.
Once you get pointed to it, it's like you start noticing it, right?
You do, yeah. And there's a lot of toxicity in the body, stress, trauma, whether you know it or not, developmental trauma, sometimes injuries, things like this will add up and overload your system. And depending on who you are, your constitution, the bandwidth of your nervous system, body, you kind of cross a line.
Right. There's a threshold.
There's a threshold.
And then once you kind of cross it,
yeah.
And there's probably gray, but like once you kind of get over this hump, then the body's kind of just in this high alert threat mode.
That's the best way of saying it. High alert threat mode. And it's like, this food is dangerous. This vegetable is dangerous, which is bizarre, right? It's like these things that have oxalates, that have other things within foods.
There's a dozen of them, right?
Totally.
Yeah, right.
And I'm learning all about this, and this woman saying, hey, you can bring food back. I got excited. So I was like, maybe. That's what came out from me. Like, maybe this will work, right? So I was like,
still doubting.
Yeah.
Like,
at this point, I'm miserable.
Yeah.
I'm
You've
cynical,
tried so many things.
Tired financially. I'm drained. I'm feeling overwhelmed. And I was like, let me give it a go. One thing that I find within myself is resilience enough to like commit to things. And I'm like, all right.
Yeah, you got very good commitment.
I will commit to this. And this thing took some commitment. And I started to see some differences. By the way, you mentioned chocolate earlier. There's like, that was part of my like way to, like the carrot on the stick for me. It was like the chocolate on the stick for me. I used chocolate as part of retraining because you get to start to introduce things back in, and you do this program and it helps you to retrain through exposure therapies. There's some NLPs mixed in. There's parts work, like a combination of these things that are in this program that help to relax your body and your nervous system and get you back on track where you can start to bring things back in and not think of everything as a threat. You're basically retraining your brain through neuroplasticity using this program to do this and to stop. The most important thing is to stop narrowing down your life into like, basically nothingness.
Yeah. And so I think there's a couple things come to mind when I think about this. When we say that the nervous system's in threat mode, I think many people may think about this or recognize this as the mind. So at some point in your journey, there was a conscious awareness of that's dangerous. Careful of that. Watch the soap. The mind is now involved consciously, and it is in high alert threat. There's also the nervous system, which is different than the mind. This is actual sort of living tissue, deeper than the conscious mind. And so even before the conscious mind is aware of all these threats, the body is still in this high alert threat mode. I think many people find themselves in this and they don't even know.
Yeah.
Because it's not in the conscious mind yet.
That's right.
Right. And then, of course, many people watching this will be, okay, I can't eat almonds. Like, well, I know that. Right. So there's this threat mode.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So this comes into play in a few different ways. But I think what's really important here is there's an aspect of retraining the mind, which I would say the software side of the equation, which to help retrain the hardware, which is the nervous system. But there also is the nervous system itself, and getting neuroplasticity, new developmental structures that are wired to safety, to relaxation, to trust, like all these things that are kind of lacking in somebody that's hypersensitive to chemicals and metals and light and all these things that you were dealing with, right? So you went through this DNRS process, which is a very big commitment. It's not for the lighthearted. I mean,
No.
I've seen part of it is there's so many miracle stories on that. So I can't give Annie Hopper, the creator, enough credit for what she's done. She's truly a genius in the way that she pulled it together to help people. And yet it takes a very high level of commitment, I think. It's not an expensive program, but 30 minutes, an hour every day for months on end, not knowing when you're going to start improving.
That's the thing, you're not knowing. Yeah.
And you're still kind of in this doubt, but the whole program not the whole program. Part of the program is actually getting you to unwind that doubt.
That's right. You
and
need
starting
to
to
have that.
believe and trust and recognize this piece of chocolate's not a threat.
Yeah.
And so again, it's like exposure therapy. Somebody that has a high level of fear to snakes. Well, you can't just have them hold a snake at the beginning.
Yep.
I mean, maybe you can. Maybe there's a way. I don't know.
Sure.
But traditionally with exposure therapy,
Yeah.
you start to think about a snake. Right? Think about a snake.
Yeah.
Then you might draw a snake. Then you
Yeah.
might look at a picture of a snake. Then you might see a snake across the room.
That's right.
It says very slow exposure to recognize. And along the way, you're doing this consciously, that there's a process of recognizing safety in whatever experience that you're going through, right?
Yeah, it's incremental.
Right.
And you're basically, with these programs, you're creating a new operating system, and you're still operating the old operating system, but you're building, like simultaneously building a new operating system and like testing it out. And then you go back to the old operating system. And eventually it's going to you're going to let go of the old operating system, and then you hop into the new operating system.
You stabilize that.
And you stabilize that. So with dynamic neural retraining, and there's other programs like Gupta program, there's I think Primal Trust.
Primal Trust, yep.
I haven't done those, but there's other programs that are similar in the way that they are working to retrain, I believe. Again, I can't speak to Primal Trust, but I think that's another one that's very similar, that gets you kind of in the right mindset and to begin to create the new operating system. And you have to, in my opinion, what I learned is like you have to have the commitment and the knowing that you will get well. That's part of it. And if you have that, you will get well.
Yeah. So, and I think the key here is not to get lost in the specifics of these programs, because I've heard great things about all of them, to be honest. You just happen to have success with DNRS in this case. But the idea I think that I really want to nail down here is that the nervous system is involved, and there's a conditioning in the nervous system. So it's not like something happens necessarily and everything's set. It's more like this conditioning of threat, and this could be very real threats in the environment. Mold, metals, chronic illness itself, just being chronically, even just you being sick for this long created some level of nervous system threat and fear loops that need to be unwound or reconditioned, right? So the reconditioning is the process. And just like learning to play the piano or learn to play golf, if you never play golf and you go swing a golf club, there's going to be a certain level of success you have based on your hand-eye coordination and whatever you've done in the past. But you need to repeat that golf swing thousands and thousands and thousands of times before it starts to become this unconscious way of operating, right?
Well, because technically we are swinging a golf club the way we don't want to. Right. We already are in these like feedback loops that are
all
symptoms.
of us existing in reality.
Well, yes. And if you have like food sensitivity and you become overly alert, that's a symptom of a limbic injury. And you're reinforcing that over and over again, not realizing like, oh, looking at like, for example, skin. If I'm looking at
constantly
hives,
noticing.
I'm constantly looking, scanning and looking. What's actually happening inside is I'm on high alert, hypervigilant. There's fear and anxiety in my body, and I'm reinforcing that over and over again. Skin, looking at my skin, looking, oh, the food, is that going to get me?
Eat this food, look up in the morning, look in the mirror.
What's going to get me?
All the things that you're doing constantly, which is very logical and understandable for all of us, right? Me, I had knee pain, right? Since I was 13 years old that I had to deal with, right? Yeah. And I recognized at some point, just like I'm thinking about my knees. I'm feeling into my knees constantly. I never think about my right shoulder or my left toe, right? My ear. Like I don't think about these things, right? But when you have this threat, you're constantly
vigilant,
aware of it.
Yeah.
And that itself reinforces the cycle.
It does.
So when I see almonds or in his chocolate, like that fear response, and then you try to eat the chocolate, and then you're constantly thinking, even if you're trying not to. That loop is already
in the background. It's like, what's going to happen? More cortisol being released, stress in the nervous system. And that's being written as the way you're moving through life. That's what's becoming like through the grooves of your consciousness or through neuroplasticity. That's what you're continually reinforcing. So you have to stop. And these programs showed me that, and it was really important as part of my healing journey.
And so you did that, and it made some like modest improvements in your process. What did you eventually realize was kind of like the main drivers of this hypervigilance, food sensitivities? Where did that stem back from in your estimation? And I'm sure there's a handful of things in your entire life, but core kind of things.
I mean, this feels like development like going all the way back to development, like living in Rhode Island
When you were a child,
as
yeah,
a child,
yeah.
like, you know, hyper vigilant of my neighborhood and, you know, like school, like just always being on alert, like growing up.
Probably even your
think-
parents had some level of this
Vigilance, yeah.
operating,
Yep.
and you were picking it up through osmosis as you're a child.
People have anxiety,
Yeah.
parents have anxiety around money. How are we gonna do? How are we gonna get to the, you know, are we gonna survive? Are we gonna, you know, are we gonna be able to afford the things that we need? Like these things are just like in us,
It's our
just
reality.
in general,
Yeah.
like in the
Yeah.
background.
Yeah.
And
by the way, maybe we should mention COVID.
Yep.
Some of these things that we sometimes even forget about,
Yep.
that was just, no, that actually has a real lasting effect for many people just going through
Yeah.
that whole process, masking up. I mean, the kids are going to have to deal with
That's
that
right.
in their system
Yeah.
at some point because of,
there's a lot of things that we don't realize that are in our, it's like a backlog
yeah.
within our consciousness that is creating hypervigilance, scanning, and protection. And we're constantly on alert. This is what I work with working with clients, you know. If we want to shift our reality and shift something and have a better relationship or call in a certain relationship or create and generate more finances, we have to work with these places in our unconscious and these defenses that are, a lot of people don't even recognize are existing. And they'll show up in things like this. Like for me, I'm hypervigilant scanning. That showed up where I used to scan the environment, got it all under control, started feeling really better, went through all my own therapy work, working to balance my nervous system, did years of working with myself. And then all of a sudden these food sensitivities showed up, and then I'm back scanning. Now I'm scanning my body instead of the environment. I'm like, all right, if I eat this, what's my week going to look like? What's my days going to look like? How am I going to function? How am I going to make money? How am I going to show up in the world?
I remember you even planning 3 months out for a thing.
Yeah.
Like, can I do that? What do I got to
Yep.
do? How's the, like, we're 3 months away
Yeah.
and you're already living in the future trying
right.
to predict this stuff, right?
Yeah.
That's how bad it can get.
So you
right?
have to get it retrained. You have to, I laid the foundations, then I moved into the next phase, which was doing neuro retraining with like a neurofeedback device.
Right.
Yeah. Things like this was what took the new operating system and solidified it, like strengthened it.
And so you said a lot of it went back to childhood. There was a couple other things I think in your life that probably played a pretty big role,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. So I also had a brain injury in 2014, which was,
So this was like 6 or 7 years before you started.
yeah.
having
So this
food
was
sensitivity?
near death experience. Surfboard hit me in the head, knocked me out, ended up with 3 bleeds in the brain. So for me, you have developmental trauma, you have
Traumatic brain injury.
just life itself is stressful.
Right.
Trying to figure out life, trying to figure out money, just trying to make it in this
Day to
world,
day.
right? And we have a lot of things we're blessed to have in the United States, and we're blessed to have here. At the same time, there's still a lot of stressors. You have that combined with toxicity, and then I have this brain injury that definitely, I believe, contributed.
And then
to
COVID
this.
was in the mix
Yeah.
just there as well, right?
Yeah.
So I think what I'm trying to highlight here is that oftentimes there's these key moments in our life or series of moments
Yeah.
that are real big players
Yeah.
in things that develop 7, 10, 30, 50 years later
Yeah.
that don't seem at all related, but they're there and playing a role at the nervous system level in so many of the ways
Yeah.
that we walk through the world. And then you have also the pervasiveness of electromagnetic fields and toxins and
Yeah.
chemicals and metals and daily stressors and hyperstimulation, right? I
Yep.
mean, even today, you grew up in the 80s as well.
Yeah.
We didn't have cell phones. We
No.
didn't have dings and pings and
No.
emails, and you got mail.
Yeah.
Like I was stoked to
That
get a
was
piece
yeah,
of
totally.
mail.
Everyone's excited. You got mail.
Right. And so it's really, we've now sort of semi-adapted, you could say,
Yeah.
to this reality, but our nervous system is playing catch up. We
Yeah.
just can't keep up with all these things that are happening. And at
Totally.
some point there's a breaking point. And I think for you, it was probably the head injury
Yeah.
that was kind of the final straw, and eventually, and it's downhill from there.
I mean, I could feel at that time after after the head injury, I started to reflect on my life, and looking back, I had, many traumatic experiences. You know, I had a surgery on my arm, and when I was in surgery, my father passed away, and I went, I ended up actually coming out of the surgery on my shoulder, and some people, the nerve blockers won't work when you
Yeah.
come out of surgery, and I was very lucky to be one of the
Ooh.
people that the nerve blockers didn't work.
Ooh.
I came out and I just remember screaming because I
Ugh.
felt all the pain.
Totally.
And they had to keep me overnight. It wasn't a surgery they normally keep you overnight. They usually let you go. And I was overnight. You know, they give you morphine and they keep you overnight to help with the pain. And they let me go. And the next day, I had my girlfriend at the time. She was driving me back home, and I remember having this feeling. I was like, my dad's dead. He's no longer alive. I still can feel like some of that
That shock.
shock. And by the way, I didn't know this. I just felt it.
Wow.
And she was like, "What are you talking about? You're on pills and morphine, and like, this is like." I was like, "No, I know this. I totally know this." And he was an hour south, and I was like, "I'm gonna drive." She's like, "No, you're not." I was like, "Let's get in the car and go." We got in the car and go, and he had passed away.
Wow.
So I felt this. I could feel this. I know now, based on the work I do, that I can understand why I felt this and how I could have that experience. And that is another traumatic experience in my nervous system, in my body. The shock of that was like compounding with other things from my entire life. I have other injuries. I have these shocking experiences that I've had many people that I've lost along the way. And I didn't realize how much I was holding on to this. And I started to move through this by, going to therapy, working with somatic therapy, energetics, moving through all this. But at this time, as I was offloading this, and I'm still on my healing journey, just like a lot of us. There's many years of a healing journey. That all this stuff added up, and then it was this storm.
Came to a climax.
It came to a climax, and I actually believe to this day a lot of this is history that I'm needing to move through, and it's showing up through symptoms of like food sensitivities.
This is what happens, right? Like things replay.
They do
if we don't sort of shut the book, right, and bring it to a close.
Yeah. So I have to face all these things in order to heal, and that's been another big part of the journey is facing all this while retraining and processing this in a very healthy way.
Accepting that's the process.
Yeah, this is part of the process.
Whether you like it or not. So
whether I like it or not, it's like part of this is it's not to discourage anybody, but it's like by turning inward and becoming like befriending what's been there has been life-changing. Not only health has been helping my health, but it's cleaned up areas of my life and my finances around relationship. I got married last year, and before that it was a wild ride with relationships. There's a lot of stressors that I no matter how hard I would work on things and try to figure things out, it was like nothing was working. So getting into retraining the nervous system, working with the brain is not only beneficial for healing food sensitivities, but it can clean up other areas of life.
And oftentimes it is these physical health symptoms that are the driver of awakening to some of these other aspects that need to be cleaned up, right? So it's so interlinked that to be honest, it's hard to even think about them as separate. It's all part of the journey.
Yep.
And I think there's a certain level of acceptance that for me, as I was kind of continue to go through deeper levels of healing, acceptance, the more I can just drop into that, into acceptance, not of the result, but of the process.
That's right.
And of the reality that I'm in right now. It's basically looking at reality in the face and accepting it for what it is without judgment, without conditions, and just saying, this is reality. This is what I'm working with.
Yeah.
And having that certain level of acceptance, I think it gets rid of some of the pain, the anger, the frustration, the apathy, all the things that can come in and just make the process harder, right? Yeah. So you realize, I think that, and again, the head injury was 6 or 7 years or whatever it was before this stuff really started sliding downhill. So I think that's really important for people to recognize because I've had clients that, they'll have a mold exposure and have mold and mycotoxins in their body, and we'll clear the mold and the mycotoxins and get the body working, and they still have symptoms. Yeah. So yes, food sensitivities can be driven by mold itself, but then the sort of echoes of mold, of that exposure, create this nervous system conditioning that's so conditioned to threat.
That's right.
And that it's essentially stuck. Yeah. And I don't want to say stuck in a traditional way. It's basically that's the habit.
That's the habit. Yeah.
It's a habituated way of the nervous system responding to the world. And so even when the mold's gone, that nervous system's still in responding. This habitual mode.
That's why you got to do it. You got to work with it. You have to retrain it.
And so you've been doing that with some of these programs. Neurofeedback you mentioned was a really big driver for success. And that is kind of a way to get into the nervous system without having to process things. It's sort of it's not as intense as DNRS. Like it doesn't require so much commitment.
Totally.
Maybe a little more expensive. You got to drive to the clinic, you got to do the thing, and you got to be consistent with it.
Yep.
But that showed a lot of progress as well.
Yeah,
right?
there was a massive amount of progress with that. With the foundation I laid with dynamic neural retraining, and then this coming in, this really cleaned up a lot of things. While simultaneously, I was still doing my inner work, like processing my history, of some of the things I named. There's other things in my history we could stay here for a long time
Yeah, sure.
talking about things that need to be processed. But this was simultaneously while working with the nervous system and the brain and retraining, I was, processing my history. So these things I found the biggest relief. I'm at that point, I'm now eating chocolate.
So talk to me about that. Actually, let's just use chocolate as a proxy for all the other foods. What was the chocolate journey like for you as you sort of use that as your sort of North Star, your goal, your objective to kind of really get back on track? How did that play out? You don't have to go into all the details, but what was generally that experience of bringing back a food that you wanted to eat and you just couldn't?
That was the most exciting thing after eating chicken and turkey.
Chocolate's everywhere, right? It's like that's part of it.
So good. It's clean chocolate, as much as I can get. Like a high, like dark chocolate, right? So, high cacao, like 90% or something. And it was doing the exposure therapy, dynamic training, you get to eat it right away. Some people don't. Some people got to hold it. For me, like you said, you got to kind of slowly
rub it on your skin.
Rub it on. It's like you take a bite and you get to enjoy it. There's actually, also the dopamine response. It's kind of like, it's like such an added thing.
It's like a treat.
Oh, it's like so good.
Whenever I give my child something.
And I would have experiences where there'd be a little bit of response of my body where like symptoms would arise at the time. We call them its in the program, and there's a whole thing.
Name it.
You don't want to because you don't want to name it. So I'm hesitant to name symptoms here, but just to use the language, these its would show up after the chocolate. So I'd get hit. It would be a suffering experience. It was not fun. It would knock me out. Then eventually I started being able to eat more with then the neurofeedback and everything else. At that point, I'm like, I can have like a few squares of chocolate. If I eat too much, it will tip over, right? If I eat like, 4 or 5 squares or something, it's like of like a chocolate, of like dark chocolate or something, it's like gonna hit the bucket's gonna be too full.
Sure.
So there was limits, and my tolerance range has grown though, because I'm able to eat a lot more now with it.
So let's say at your worst, you were on a scale from 0 to 100, you were at a 1 in terms of success with food availability and food freedom. 100 being complete food freedom, you can eat whatever you want, no issues. Where are you in that journey at this point?
Today?
Yeah. I
would say I'm about a 70.
Okay.
75, 70. Some days 80 because it can fluctuate. But I'm doing really well compared to where I was.
I mean, that's pretty dramatic.
Life-changing. Like
when you get to that, I can't stress this enough. I've worked with people that are sensitive to 5 foods and 10 foods and what have you. And the people that are sensitive to 40, 50, it is so hard. It's really, really hard to come. It's like infinitely more difficult at that point when you're down to 2 foods and 3 foods. This is a very difficult journey. So the fact that you're to that, whatever that level subjectively is pretty remarkable.
And it shows up in my life. It's like I'm able to travel. I was able to go on a honeymoon. I was able to have a little bit of a life here that felt like, a lot of life. I was able to go to my wedding and
go to your wedding
and eat food and be there and show that at first I didn't know if we were going to be able to have a wedding where it would be
a rice cake.
Like, well, not just with the food,
mochi.
but just totally. But it's like, that's funny. It's not even just like the food. It's like the way I felt.
Yeah.
I needed food to be able to feel good, to be able to bring nutrients back in my life. I'm missing.
This is a nourishment.
I'm missing so many things.
You're missing so all of the things that should be nourishment are threats. I mean, that is a wild concept to even just consider.
It's if you haven't experienced it, it's really complicated to understand how complex life is. If you can't sleep in sheets, if you can't use soap,
can't think,
you can't think. There's a time where I was playing a board game with my wife and I was rolling a dice and I was staring at the dice. I couldn't do simple math. Basic math, trying to explain this to people and for them to understand. It's like I didn't.
They can comprehend it. They can't understand it.
It's really complicated. It's like I felt so lonely.
Yeah,
I felt there's still like I almost feel that today. Like,
I can feel it.
I feel sad
right now. Yeah.
Even just naming that. Like I felt so sad, so alone, and so isolated, and nobody could fully grasp it. And I didn't really know how to vocalize it to people as well. So it's kind of like I kind of kept it hidden as well. It's kind of my nature.
Well, and as you mentioned, there's a certain detriment to sharing that story over and over again. And I'm glad and grateful you're doing it today. But sharing that, can you imagine? I mean, sharing that story every day.
Yeah.
Of basically the trauma.
Yeah.
You're just reinforcing that loop, right? So,
Yeah.
and I know you have enough separation and enough in your system now to be able to hold that in
Yeah.
its proper context. So this last 20 to 30%, you're still kind of in this process of like, in other words, there's something there you think that, there is to be addressed, right? So do you get a sense that there's more on the physical level, like something in your system, whether it's some kind of infection or something happening that's still kind of driving a lot of this response?
So I do. So up until this point, I haven't been able to take supplements. I just started taking like a histamine-friendly probiotic to help with the gut. That actually has helped a lot recently.
That doesn't surprise
Helped
me.
a lot.
That was one of my early recommendations to you with some of of these things. You're like, I can't take them.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, okay.
I wasn't there yet.
I'm like, well, this is.
I probably should have retrained those instead of chocolate. I won't be honest.
Retain the supplement. But this is a big part of it.
Yeah.
And that's where you're heading or kind of are now is where most people might be starting.
Yeah.
Right. And this can be a really big driver. So in other words, this process of unwinding this, you create this virtuous cycle in the system. Now the system can accept nutrients from food.
Yeah.
Wonderful. That goes a long way to healing.
Yes.
Supplements and nutraceuticals and some of these other therapies, right? Like now you can start getting into these other things that'll continue this process.
Yeah. And I tested, I did a total tox test with somebody that I was talking to. They recommended it. I was like, I was kind of hesitant. I was like, all right, let me do it. And every other test I've taken hasn't showed any mold. This test showed some mold. So my plan is to, now that I can start to introduce supplements, look at potentially like a detox.
Yeah.
I haven't been able to detox my body. It's just wasn't available. It would have wiped me out to a point where I wasn't able to function.
It's too much.
I wouldn't be able to have an income.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be able to like survive. So there's a balance. There's a balance here that I have to be mindful of. So I can feel that the next steps would be moving into a detox. Some people start with this. Some people have the availability to have time off. I didn't. It would have been complicated to take time off. If you have that resource, then you could potentially, be a little more, maybe not aggressive or more assertive toward it, or like kind of come at it a little harder.
Right.
I had to really be mindful to be able to balance life in a way that was aligned, where I can still have an income and still function and still have do what I love. I love to be of service in the world and doing what I do. That's also that, to be honest, that's probably what kept me really going, is like my wife and being of service.
I felt it. The fact that you couldn't do it to the level that you wanted to, and that you had to let some of your clients go because it was too much on your own system.
That's right.
Because the level of support you provide is so honestly fantastic and unbelievable. You give so much to it that it was draining you because you just didn't have the capacity to work with it. And I could see and feel how that was really just like, it was antithetical to like what you're here for.
Yeah. And that's my soul's purpose. Like I'm here to serve. I love doing what I'm doing. And if I would have lost that, I don't know where I would have made it to. I don't know if I don't even know if I would have got through this, to be honest. I needed to have that. So coming back to what I was saying, it's like, if you have that availability to go at it and do these detoxes, that's great. For me, I've been having to kind of slowly move with it all. Now I think I feels like my next step is to look at detoxing the mold, looking at some protocols I could be doing that. I'm kind of exploring that. There's different things that people talk about, like cell core and other things out there that people use for these type of detoxes.
There's lots of paths. I mean, that's the thing. And so I think you're self-guided in this way, and trust your own intuition as well as being open to what's out there. But I think that no two paths are the same. Yeah. And I think what's important for you was the order. The priority was the nervous system, and the sort of the order of operations was really critical in your case. And you can't do it all at once. And if you start in the wrong place, it's not going to work, or it's not going to work, or it's going to make it worse. Yeah. And so I think, again, that's why I wanted to bring you on, because I think this piece gets left out, even for those who are not as severe of a case as you are working with. This is still part of it, I think, for most people. Most people that I've worked with in the sort of chronic illness space, this is a piece. We got to address the nervous system. We got to get the nervous system retrained, conditioned to safety. And it can look like a lot of different things. There's a lot of ways to do that. But if we're missing that piece, then we're missing an aspect of healing that could either sort of move through this process easier, faster, and more successfully, or we're just not going to get to the finish line.
That's right. Yeah, well said. Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly. Nervous system, limbic system, like it to me, like getting to the root of what the cause is, like, is there mold at the house and what's happening? That's probably top of the list. Like, figure out what it is. for me, secondary is like nervous system, limbic system, like understanding what's happening. How are you moving through the world? Are you living in hypervigilance? Are you living in fear? Are you stressed and don't even know it? Because all these things are perpetuating the symptoms, creating more sensitivities. Are you stressed about what you're eating? Are you stressed about work and money all the time? Which a lot of people are, and we need to get that under. We need to find
many people that aren't, to be honest.
And if you can't hire somebody to work with, if you can, that's like, what I do. There's other people that do this. There's many people in the world that can support with this. If you can't, there's so many tools out there online, YouTube, ways to find more balance, to find more coherence in the nervous system and in the body. Working with someone's most ideal, and for guidance, but there's other many things out there, even low cost things that can help balance the nervous system, that can help get people into a state of well-being instead of living from fear, because a lot of that is what's causing these diseases.
Agreed. And I think these things we have seasons in our life.
Yeah.
Right. And I was reminded by Ayurveda on this topic. There's seasons and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we don't know when we're on the sort of top of the mountain. We generally feel the peak, or the valley rather, when we're at the valley. But we have these seasons. And I, for years, I knew you, and then you went through this health crisis, and there was a part of me that's like, wow, what? I kind of thought you established enough well-being in your system to not have to deal with this.
I thought so too.
But this is the reminder for me, is that we just don't know.
Yeah.
And there's always these times. And so the more stability, the more safety, the more resource, the more alignment that we can develop in our system, these peaks and valleys are still going to happen.
Yeah.
But we can navigate them with a little bit more ease.
Yeah.
We don't have to learn so hard, we can go through them a little bit easier. I think if you didn't have the level of stability in your nervous system, in your awareness, I would say, not even just your nervous system, your awareness.
Yeah.
This would have been probably crippling.
It definitely would have been crippling. Yeah.
So this has been amazing. I also want to say that, you sharing this is fantastic. It's a little bit outside of the typical work you do. Tell people just a little bit more about kind of what you work with. I know you work with really high level executives, people that are doing really big things in the world, go-getters, people that are committed to making a difference in their business, in their community, in their world. How do you work with them? What's kind of your process, and what are you helping them with?
Yeah. So, working with like these leaders and awakening leaders, I would say people that are wanting to have an impact in the world and create new systems, businesses that are regenerative, things that support what we're moving through as a species. There's a lot of changes happening on the planet. It's accelerating very quickly. I have a feeling the next few years are not a big surprise. They're going to get even more wild. I've always said 2027. It feels like it's going to be a wild year, and it seems like we're already in that.
Yeah.
If you look around, like there's always a lot of things happening with humanity, a lot of changes occurring. We can look back in history and see that, but right now it is wild out there. So we're needing leaders to show up in their essence, in their compassionate hearts, including themselves, but not only themselves.
So you're not working with them on the sort of business strategies. You're working with them as the individual, the human, the soul, the spirit, the
bridging,
the essence, the whole aspect of who they are, and bringing that into whatever they're doing.
Yeah, working on aligning to their essence, embodying their essence, coming into that deeper place of connection with their deeper intelligence that's very wise, is intuitive, that knows how to move through business, knows how to deploy finances and capital in certain ways that are going to be aligned to supporting humanity. It's working with the obscurities, working with the blocks that are in the way. What are the energetic blocks? What is the history? I already mentioned some of my history. What is the history that is creating fear-based action instead of coming from love, coming from our hearts that are in service to each other, in service to brothers and sisters, instead of taking or trying to compete in a negative way, or extracting, or I need to create this business because I need money for me because I'm living in fear. How can we align and create reality in our relationships, have deeper connection in our relationships, having more intimacy with ourselves so we can be more intimate with our partners, and coming from that place of essence. When we come from essence, we realize we truly realize we're one. A lot of people say this, not to sound cliche, but
Well, there's a
this is-
mind level of understanding, right?
yes.
And there's sort of like an acceptance.
Yes.
Okay, that's how it is. Like there's an adopted worldview that we are one and da, da,
Yes.
da, right? And you actually see this a lot with sort of spiritual people.
Sure.
I used to live in Los Angeles and in Santa Monica, Venice, and there were a lot of these,
Yeah.
right? And they're preaching this stuff, and I could feel they don't really embody
Yeah.
this thing
Yeah.
that they probably believe,
Yeah.
but they're believing it from kind of up here.
And when we have that realization and we feel it and we're actually moving from that, we don't other. We stop othering. When we other, we live in fear of the other, or we desire the other. And these things create suffering. And from there, if we move from that place of othering, it's like it creates a lot of chaos, separation, pain, systems of extraction, and harming the planet, harming each other. When we realize we're one, we even realize the planet is part of that. Everything is connected, and we can feel that in our bodies. We feel that in our hearts. We have this deeper knowing and realization. And I'm supporting people with what is getting in the way of that, and how do we come from that deeper place of
So what's
essence?
getting in the way? How do we maybe process some things that are in the way?
Yep.
How do we recognize them?
Yep.
And then also, I know this because I worked with you.
Yeah.
How do we recognize the truth,
That's right.
the essence of the truth?
Yeah.
Because sometimes we know it deep somewhere, but until we feel it or recognize it in a way, it's like once we recognize it, like, oh, that's it. We don't know we know it, but we know it.
That's right.
And then we get reminded of it, you could say.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, that's what that is.
That's right.
It's almost like, hearing, you can play this to a child. You can play C sharp on the piano, and then you can play something off tune, and they'll be able to tell that's the good one.
Yeah.
Right. There's like some kind of knowing, and I don't even know how we do that, how we can tell an on tune or in tune note versus something that's out of tune.
Yeah.
But and that can be refined, right? Like the level of tuneness can be refined
Yeah.
by a really good ear.
Yeah.
And so this is to me what you're doing is
Yeah.
you're refining this ability to sense sometimes thread the needle on
Yeah.
where the truth is, what the best option is, what's real for me, what's in alignment for me and others, and how do I operate from that place more often,
Yeah.
deeper, like more precise
In all the different facets of life.
and everywhere,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And-
Exactly.
And I think that's what's cool is that sometimes there's specificities,
Mhm.
but other times it's a universality
Yeah.
with this stuff. And it's like once you're there, then it's going to infiltrate every aspect of your life without you even trying. There's no way to sort of parse it out.
It cleans up so many areas of there's magic there too. There's so much magic. There's so much fun. And there's so much care and love that's just inherently there. It's all right there. It's really amazing.
We do amazing work locally. We call Andrew the magician,
The wizard.
Or sorry, the wizard. You had me on magic. We call him the wizard.
I didn't create that name, by the way. That was given.
No, you
Like,
didn't. You didn't. And that's how I got introduced to you before we even met. And you're like, oh, he's the wizard. I'm like, he's the wizard.
like a beard and a
Like,
hat.
Well, we're in Southern California, so I was expecting like anything at that point. And then the level of embodiment and realness that came from you, and the magic that came from that, I understood that sort of fun nickname. But I encourage everybody to check out his website, andrewdgregorio.com. You can check out everything he's got there. If you want to find somebody truly special to work with and do things that honestly nobody I've seen can do, it's this guy here. So
Aw,
thanks
you.
for coming on. I really do appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you, Jason. Appreciate you, brother. Thank you.
Well, this concludes today's interviews, and I truly hope you enjoyed the fantastic information shared by our speakers. Be sure to tune in tomorrow because we have 3 more brilliant experts sharing scientifically proven strategies to help you accelerate healing, boost your energy, balance your hormones, and improve your gut. If you feel you might miss any of the upcoming interviews, I highly recommend you grab your all-access pass today at the exclusive event-only price of $67, so you can watch and rewatch at your leisure. All you have to do is click the button on this page to secure instant on-demand access to all 15 presentations, plus over $1,200 in bonuses. On behalf of the entire production crew, I want to thank you for joining us today, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow for the Food Sensitivity Summit.